ความมุ่งมั่นรังสรรค์โลกยั่งยืนกลุ่มบริษัทบางจากผู้นำการเปลี่ยนผ่านด้านพลังงานได้เดินหน้าสะท้อนทิศทางการสร้างความสมดุลทางด้านพลังงานควบคู่ไปกับการดูแลสิ่งแวดล้อมและความเป็นอยู่ที่ดีขึ้นของสังคมสู่สาธารณะผ่าน Greenovative Forum เวทีแห่งปีมาตั้งแต่ปี 2554 เพื่อร่วมตอบโจทย์ประเด็นโลกด้านสิ่งแวดล้อมความยั่งยืนนวัตกรรมเฟ้นหาคำตอบร่วมกันกับผู้เชี่ยวชาญและพันธมิตรจากภาคส่วนต่างๆมาเป็นเวลาต่อเนื่อง 12 ปีแล้วจนในวันนี้วันที่โลกกำลังส่งสัญญาณเตือนเราอย่างไม่หยุดยั้งและวันนี้ที่เราได้ก้าวสู่วิกฤตภาวะโลกเดือดซึ่งทุกฝ่ายรวมถึงบางจากก็กำลังเดินหน้าสู่การเปลี่ยนผ่านสู่พลังงานสะอาดเพื่อร่วมบรรเทาปัญหาสภาพภูมิอากาศผ่านการปรับเปลี่ยนธุรกิจและภารกิจต่างๆแต่เราก็ไม่สามารถเปลี่ยนผ่านได้ชั่วข้ามคืนเพราะการเปลี่ยนผ่านต้องใช้ทั้งเวลาเทคโนโลยีและเงินทุนมหาศาลทุกวันนี้เรายังต้องพึ่งพาเชื้อเพลิงฟอสซิลต้องใช้พลังงานควบคู่ไปกับการใช้ชีวิตประจำวันรวมถึงการประกอบธุรกิจต่างๆโดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งเมื่อเรายังต้องเดินทางตลอดเวลาไม่ว่าจะเป็นการสัญจรหรือขนส่งทางบกทางน้ำหรือทางอากาศเราจะสัญจรอย่างไรให้ยั่งยืน Regenerative Fuels คืออะไรและจะตอบโจทย์นี้ได้อย่างไรขอเชิญชวนทุกท่านมาทำความรู้จักกับเชื้อเพลิงที่จะช่วยให้การเดินทางของเราดีต่อโลกมากขึ้น Regenerative Fuels การลงทุนเพื่ออนาคตเพื่อขับเคลื่อนโลกไปข้างหน้าสู่การเดินทางอย่างยั่งยืน
สวัสดีครับทุกท่านครับเริ่มงานแล้วครับขอเสียงความคึกคักด้วยยินดีต้อนรับนะครับแขกผู้มีเกียรตินะครับท่านสื่อมวลชนนะครับแล้วก็ทุกคนเลยที่ชมกันผ่าน Facebook Live แล้วก็ YouTube Live นะครับในช่องทางของบางจากนะครับผมหนุ่ยพงษ์สุรพฤกษ์นะครับภูมิใจมากๆวันนี้ได้รับเกียรตินะครับมาร่วมเวทีกับทุกๆคนเลยนะครับในชื่อ Regenerative Forum ครั้งที่ 13 นะครับแล้วก็มีหัวข้อว่า Regenerative Fuels
Greenovative Forum on the topic of regenerative fuels, sustainable mobility. Some of you might be wondering, it's already the 13th round already? Because yes, we've been doing this every year since 2011.
แต่เมื่อก่อนนี้ท่านอาจจะไม่คุ้นชื่อนี้เพราะว่า
And you might not you might be thinking, didn't we use a different name? Because in the past we just used the name annual meeting, which is not that exciting, right? So we're going to use the name Greenovative Forum from this year onwards. So the Regenerative Forum 2013 will be a new start for us. As we know, we've done this for quite a while, but we might not have been the best at spreading the word to everyone, and we're going to try to change that by rebranding ourselves as the Greenovative Forum. And we also have some very interesting speakers to share with us about the changes that we can expect to see in the future. And we started at 9:09, which is a very auspicious time, which is a coincidence, but good nonetheless, because 9 in Thai is Gao, which also means advancing and progressing forward. So this event is hosted by Bangchak Group and has been hosted, as I mentioned, continuously to bring us the newest issues and knowledge about the changing technologies and looking at the changing context when it comes to sustainability. And we've seen a lot of new things happen throughout the years, and as a leader in energy transition and leader in green innovations, we have been expanding our renewable energy to different areas. We've been working on biofuels, carbon market clubs, and we are also the innovators in SynBio with various organizations joining with different sectors, even the media. And at the moment we have over 700 partners, 700 members in the carbon market club. And we also have clean energy, for example, producing sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. This is something that we are going to talk a lot about today. One of those projects is using cooking oil or ethanol to manufacture manufacture flying fuel. So that means once you fried your food, we don't throw that away. There's no waste. We can use that and transform that into
ฉะนั้นในมุมมอง
aviation
นี้
fuel.
นะครับเราทำได้เป็นรายแรก
And we are the
SAF
first
นี่เป็น
one
รายแรกและรา
to
ย
be
เดียว
do
ด้วย
that.
นะครับ
SAF, we are
เรา
the
เปิด
one
นะ
and
ครับสถา
only
นีบริการก๊าซธรรม
company
ชา
doing
ติเหล
that,
ว
and
ที่
we
เรียกว่า
also have
LNG
LNG
นะครับรายแรก
stations.
เหมือนกันนะ
We're
ครับ
also
แล้ว
the
ก็
first
ส
to
นับสนุ
do
นเรื่องเชื้อ
so,
เพลิงสะอาดสำหรับภาคอุตสาหกรรม
and also
ขนส่ง
supporting clean
เราบุก
energy
เบิ
in
ก
the
แพลตฟอร์ม
transport
นะครับให้
sector.
เช่ามอเตอร์ไซ
We
ค์
are
ไฟฟ้า
innovators
พร้อมเครือ
in
ข่ายสถานีบริ
renting
การ Winoni
or leasing electric
ที่วินมอเตอร์ไซค์จะได้ไม่
EV
ต้องไปดิ้นนะครับ
motorcycles
ใช้พลังงาน
called
สะอาด
Winoni
ที่
so
ป
that
ระหยัดกว่าเยอะ
our
นะครับแล้ว
drivers
ก็หมุนเวียน
and
เศรษฐกิจ
service
ได้อย่างดี
providers
ขึ้นนะครับ
won't have
ตลอด
to
จ
be
น
in debt
เรา
just to get
มี
an
บทบาท
EV
นะครับในการสร้างระบบ
and
นิ
to
เวศ
help
สังคม
us with
คา
the
ร์บอ
low
นต่ำ
carbon
นะครับเช่นเดียวกันกับหลายปี
ecosystem.
ที่ผ่านมานะครับเราจัด
And
งานใหญ่
the same
นะ
as
ครับ
the
หลายๆ
many
ครั้ง
years
เนี่ยบางจาก
before
ได้รับเกียรติจาก
that
ทุก
we've
ท่าน
held
มากๆนะครับ
this
มาร่วม
event,
งานกับเรา
we are
แนว
very
คิดของเราก็
honored
คือ
and we're glad to
ทำ
see you
เป็นการเป็นมิตรกับสิ่ง
participating.
แวดล้อมนะครับ
And
มีการ
our
ชดเชย
key
นะครับเรื่องราว
focus
ต่างๆปกติ
is
เรา
being
ขายพลังงาน
environmentally
เนี่ยแน่น
friendly
อน
because of
มัน
course
มี
we
คา
are
ร์บอ
an
นน้อย
energy
แล้ว
company.
แต่สิ่งที่
We are going
กิจ
to
กรรมมนุษย์ทำ
produce
เนี่ย
or
เราขออนุ
emit
ญาตนะครับ
carbons and
เราขอ
greenhouse
ชด
gases.
เช
But
ย
what we
คาร์
want
บอน
to
จาก
do
การ
is
จัด
try
งาน
to
นี้ทำให้ทุก
offset
คนที่
that.
เข้าร่วมในวันนี้นะครับ
We want to ensure that our
Carbon
events,
credits ก็คือ
such as this
Carbon
one,
Neutral Event
are
อันนี้คือ
carbon
มีความเป็น
neutral.
กลางทางคาร์บอนนะครับทุก
So
ท่านที่เข้ามานี่
So feel assured that everyone here, your carbon footprints will be offset by Bangchak Group. And since we are going to be talking about future fuels for sustainable mobility, we are very honored to have leading experts to speak to us today on different topics.
อันนี้ชื่อ Pioneering
Called Pioneering
Sustainable
Sustainable
Aerospace และนอก
Aerospace.
จากนี้นะค
That's
รับ
going to be a panel
ตลอดทุกเนื้อหา
discussion
เราจัดทำเป็น
later
visual
on,
note
and we also
บัน
have
ทึกสรุปประ
visual
เด็น
notes
สำคัญจากวิทยากร
that
แต่ละ
are
ท่าน
going
นะครับใน
to
รูปแบบ
highlight and
Visual
summarize the
Thinking
key
by
points of each of our
BBC
speakers
ก็คือ
today,
คุณ
done by
ปุณ
BBC. We have คุณปุณธนิตพัญญมงคลสวัสดิ์
ศิลปินท่านนี้เลยนะครับปรบมือต้อนรับได้นะครับ
Please, a round of applause
คุณ
for
ปุณ
them.
จะอยู่กับเรา
คุ
นะ
ณ
ครับ
ปุณ
บ
will
ริ
be
เว
with
ณ
us
ขอบซ้ายเวทีนะครับท่านจะเห็น
to
การ
help
วาด
us
ไปเรื่อย
with
ๆนะครับของคุณปุณนะครับ
summarizing
วันนี้
our
เรามา
concepts
ชมกัน
into
นะครับว่า
art.
แต่ละคนสรุปหัวข้อประเด็น
And we'll
ไป
see
เราจะ capture
what
สิ่งนี้ส่งให้
comes out
ทุกท่าน
at
ด้วย
the
นะครับ
end, and
เพื่อ
we're
จะ
going
ได้
to
จำ
share
ได้ง่ายไม่ลืม
this piece of
นะครับ
art with you
ระบบ
at the
การจำ
end
เป็นภาพเนี่ยดี
so
เลยทีเดียว
that
นะค
we
รับ
can remember
เอา
it
ละครับ
better.
ในช่วงแรกนะครับบุคคลสำคัญที่จะมาขับเคลื่
So
อน
first of all,
แน่นอนเป็นผู้นำกลุ่ม
we
บริษัท
have
บางจาก
the
ด้วย
leader
นะครั
of
บ
Bangchak
ในท
Group.
ศวรรษที่ผ่านมาเนี่ยเราเห็น
And in the past decade, we've seen his
ในฐานะผู้นำการเปลี่ยนแปลงพลังงาน
determination
นะครับวันนี้บาง
into
จากก็กลาย
help
เป็นกลุ่มธุรกิจ
pushing,
ต่างๆ
driving
ที่
the
กำลัง
energy transition.
ทำต้น
And
น้ำ
we've seen
ปลาย
a
น้ำ
lot of
นวัตกรรม
projects from
สีเขียว
upstream to
ต่างๆ
downstream, a lot of green
ผมกล้าพูดได้นะครับว่า
innovations.
เมื่อ
I can honestly say
ตามที่
that
เราได้เห็นกันไปเนี่ยนะครับเรา
from
กล้า
what
พู
we
ดได้
have
เลยว่า
seen in the
ความสำคั
past
ญที่
10 years,
บางจากทำวัน
the
นี้นะครับ
importance of
ผลักดันให้
Bangchak's
บางจาก
work
อยู่แถวหน้าของ
has
ภูมิภาคเอเชีย
elevated
แปซิฟิก
us
แล้ว
to
นะครับ
the
ด้วยการ
being
ขยาย
one of the
กิจการ
leaders in
ต่อเนื่อง
Asia
นะครับ
Pacific in
ล่าสุดไม่
our
นานนี้
field.
ครับ
And
บาง
not
จากได้ทำ
long
สิ่งที่
ago,
หุ้นชอบ
Bangchak did something that our
เราไปเป็น
shareholders
หุ้นรายใหญ่ของบริษัท
appreciated a lot
ประเทศไทย
because we
เดิมนะครับ
became
ซึ่งในวันนี้
a
เปลี่ยนชื่อ
major
เรียบร้อยเป็นบริษัท
shareholder
บา
of
งจาก
Esso
ศรีราชา
Thailand, and
จำ
we've
กัดม
changed,
หาชนนะครับ
rebranded to
หรือ
Bangchak
BSRC
Srirasha
ท่านเริ่มเห็นสัญลักษณ์การ
or
เปลี่ยนผ่าน
BSRC. You've seen this transition already, some new logos, you might have seen them before, and we are going to complete the transition in the next 2 years. So everyone in this room, I would like you to give a round of applause to continue moving forward and continue excelling. And every year he is here with us to provide us with the latest updates every year. Feel free to quote him, use the information he provides, and share this knowledge with others. All of his advice will be highlighted and condensed, crystallized to this year, because today we're going to talk about regenerative fuels and sustainable mobility. How can we move sustainnably in the future's world? So I would like you all to invite once again Group Chief Executive Officer and President of Bangchak Corporation PLC, Mr. Chaiwat Kowa Visarat.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Your Excellencies,
คณะท่าน
honorable guests, แขกทุกท่านนะครับ going to be in Thai.
So I'm going
hope
to
that
present
you get
this
translated.
in Thai.
ครับก็
We'll have interpretation. So thank you, Kun Nui, for your introduction.
อีกครั้งหนึ่งนะครับ
And
ที่เราเจอกัน
again,
แล้วก็
we meet
ก็ศึกษา
in
ระหว่างทาง
our
แล้วก็มีอะไร
forum.
ก็มาเล่าสู่กันฟัง
And
นะครับ
whatever I have learned over the past year, I'm going to
ที่
share with you in these forums.
จำได้นะครับปีที่แล้ว
So if you
หน้า
remember
นี้ทีหนึง
last year,
อันนี้เป็นการ
I
รีแคปนะครับว่า
have this presentation
วัน
as
นี้
well. So I'm just
ทุก
recapping
วัน
here. Today
โลกเรา
and
นะครับ
every day
บริโภคพลังงาน
globally we
ต่อวัน
consume
1.7 exajoule
energy 1.7 exajoule per year.
06 ตัวเนี่ยเรียกว่าล้าน
So 60 is a million, right?
12 ตัวเนี่ย
So
เรียกว่าล้านล้าน
12 is trillion,
เอ็กซ่านี่คือมี
and
0.8 ตัว
exa has 18
เพราะฉะนั้น
zeros.
ทุกๆ1 วัน
Therefore,
นะครับ
every
พลังงาน
day
1 จูลก็คือ
So
ของ
1
น้ำหนัก
joule
1 กิโล
of
เคลื่อนที่
energy
ได้ 1 เมตร
to 1
นะครับเพราะฉะนั้น
kilometer can move
ทุกๆวัน
1
เนี่ย
meter.
โลก
So
ใบนี้บริโภค
daily,
พลังงาน
our
1.7
world consumes
ล้านจูล
1.7
ต่อวันนะครับไม่ใช่
exajoule.
ต่อปีต่อ
That's
วัน
per day.
เทียบเท่ากับพลังงานที่ใช้
That's
นะครับ
actually
Airbus
equivalent
320
to the
มี
energy
รอบโลก
consumed
วัน
by
ละ
Airbus
350,000
A32 traveling around the world
นะครับ
300
หรือ
350,000 rounds.
โลกกับดวงจันทร์
Or
วันละ 37,000 รอบ
a round
นั่น
trip
คือพ
to
ลัง
the
งาน
moon
ที่เราบริ
up
โภค
to
ต่อวัน
37,000 round trips.
แล้วตรงนี้จะมีแหล่งพลังงานมาจากไหน
So where are the source of energy?
แหล่ง
then?
พลังงานถ้า
The
ต้องการ
source of
ผลิต
energy
1.7
If we were to
ล้าน
produce
จูลต่อวันเนี่ย
1.7
เราจะ
exajoule,
ใช้พลังงาน
we are going
จากแหล่งหมุน
to
เวียนนะครับข้างบนสุด
use
ก็คือพลังงานหมุนเวียนประมา
renewable
ณ 12%
energy
ซึ่ง
up to
80% ของ
12%.
12%ตรงนี้ก็คือ
80% of
พ
that
ลังงานน้ำไฮ
12%
โดร
is hydro.
มีไบโอแมสนะครับก็เอาไม้
We
มา
have
เผา
a portion
นะครับมีนิวเคลี
from
ยร์
biomass
ที่เหลืออีก
and also a
79%
portion
หรือ 80%
nuclear. The
เป็นแหล่ง
other
ฟอสซิล
79 to
น้ำมัน
80%
อยู่
is
ตรงกลาง
from
ประมาณ
fossil
30%
fuel.
เป็นแชร์
And
ที่ใหญ่
oil
ที่สุ
is
ด
about 30%. That's the largest share.
ซึ่งฟอสซิล 80% ก็เทียบ
So
เท่ากับ
80% of fossil fuel is equivalent to 1.4 exajoule.
น้ำมันต่อวันนะครับ
So per
ต่อวัน
day,
นะครับ
we are consuming
220 ล้านบาร์เรลต่อวัน
220 million barrel
ถ้า
per
เทียบเป็น
day.
น้ำล่ะ
What about
เท่ากับน้
hydropower?
ำ
That's
35,000 ล้านลิตรต่อวัน
35,000
ประชากรโลกมี
milliliters
กี่
per
คนครับ
day. So what's the
8,000
world
ล้านคน
population? That's 8 billion,
เท่ากับคน
35
หนึ่งนี้
billion.
บริโภค 4.4 ลิตร
So
ต่
per
อวัน
day, we are
มาก
consuming
กว่าน้ำที่เราดื่ม
4.4 liters per day. That's
น้ำเราดื่
even
มวันละแค่2
more
ลิตร
than
นะค
a
รับ
drinking
อันนี้
water
2
because
เท่า
we're
ของน้ำที่เรา
consuming
ดื่ม
about 2 liters per day.
เห็นว่าเราใช้พลังงานเยอะ
So
นะ
you
ครับ
can
เราใช้พลัง
see
งาน
how
เยอะ
much
มากนะครับ
energy we consume, right? In the
ใน
global community.
แล้วรูปแบบของพลังงานที่ใช้เนี่ย
What about the
เมื่อสักครู่ผม
various
บอกว่า
forms of
น้ำมันเนี่ย
energy?
จะเป็น
I
พอร์ชั่น
said
ค่อนข้างใหญ่
earlier that
30%
oil is a large portion,
ผมมี
up
ครับ
to 30%. There's a reason
ผมเรียกว่า
why.
จริงๆถ้าเราเปรียบเทียบ
So if we make a
พลังงาน
comparison
หนึ่งจูลเนี่ยนะครับ
1
เทียบกับ
joule
ปริ
of
มาตรก็คือ
energy
ลิตร
to
เทียบกับน้ำหนัก
volume
ก็
or
คือกิโล
liters or in
เราจะเห็นว่าลิ
kilograms,
เธียมไอออนเนี่ย
you
อยู่
see that
ข้างล่างเลย
lithium ion is
นะครับ
down
ขณะที่
below
น้ำมันเนี่ยอยู่ข้างบน
while oil is up
แปลว่าอะไรครับ
top. What does
แปลว่า
this mean? It means
น้ำมัน1 กิโลเนี่ย
1 kilogram
รถ
of
วิ่ง
oil
15 กิโล
can take the vehicle forward
แต่ถ้า
15
แบตเตอรี่เนี่ย
kilometers.
1 กิโล
But with the battery,
แบบ1 กิโลนะครับวิ่งได้ไม่ถึง
1 kilometers,
กิโล
1 kilogram cannot reach 1
efficiency
kilometers.
ต่างๆนะครับ
So
มันทำให้น้ำมัน
efficiency,
มีประสิทธิภาพสูงกว่าเกือบ 20 เท่า
so basically fuel
นะครับ
has
มันคือสาเห
20
ตุที่ว่า
times
ทำไม
energy
แบตเตอรี่
efficiency.
ยังไม่ take off สัก
That's
ที
why batteries
นึกว่าครับคือต้องแบกน้ำห
does
นัก
not
ตัวเอง
take
ค่อนข้างเยอะ
off because it's
ถ้าจะให้
carrying
วิ่งได้เท่า
itself.
15 กิโลเนี่ยคือต้องมีแบตเตอ
Because
รี่
in
หนั
order
ก
to
20 กิโล
achieve 50 kilometers,
ใส่เข้าไปในรถ
we'll need
เพื่อจะวิ่ง
20
ได้เท่าน้ำมัน
kilograms
หนัก
of
1 กิโล
batteries in the
นะ
car.
ครับก็เลยทำให้น้ำมันเนี่ยยังเป็นที่นิยม
Oil or fuel is still
นั่น
a
คือข้อที่หนึ่ง
preference. So that's the
ข้อ
first
ที่สองก็
reason.
คืออันนี้
The
คือ
second
ภาพ
reason
คร่าวๆประชากรโลกจะเห็นว่าคนประชากรโลกส่วนใหญ่เนี่ย
you can see
อยู่ที่
that
เอ
the
เชีย
world population
แต่
lives
ที่
in
สำคัญก็คือ
Asia.
ว่า
But what's important is
energy source
the
หรือแหล่ง
energy
ของ
source
พลังงานเนี่ยมันไม่เคยอยู่ในเมืองนะครับ
is
มี
never
ใคร
in the city.
เจาะหลุมน้ำมันในกรุงเทพมหานครไหมครับ
So there is no oil
หรือใน
rig
นิวยอร์กซิตี้หรือใน
in
ลอนดอนไหมครับไม่
Bangkok,
มี
New York, or
ส่วนใหญ่
London.
เนี่ยมันอยู่ที่ข้างนอกอยู่
Mostly
ตามชาย
these
ฝั่ง
oil rig
อยู่ตาม
is
อยู่ตาม
offshore
ทะเลลึก
in deep
เพราะฉะนั้น
sea.
เนี่ยมันต้องมีการเคลื่อนย้าย
Therefore, there needs to be
พลังงานจาก
movement
source ของ
of
มัน
energy
จาก
from
ต้นแหล่ง
its
ของมัน
source
มาให้กับผู้บริโภค
towards the consumers.
นะครับซึ่งการเคลื่อนย้ายได้หลายแบบ
So
ถ้าเป็นแก๊ส
there are many ways
วิธี
to
ง่ายที่สุด
transport this.
ก็คือ
If
ส่ง
the
ไปตาม
energy
ท่อ
is in gas form, it can be
นะครับ
transported
ส่ง
in
ไปตาม
pipes
ท่อ
to pipelines.
แต่ถ้if เป็นของเหลว
But if the energy,
ขึ้นมา
if
คุณ
it's
จะ
in
ส่งไปตาม
liquid
ท่อก็
form,
ได้
you can send it
คุณส่ง
through
ไปตามเรือก็
pipelines
ได้
or
คุณเอารถขน
by
ก็ได้คุณเอารถ
vessels
ไฟขนก็ได้
or trucks or trains.
นะครับถ้าเป็น solid form ก็คือ
But
ถั
the
ง
fuel, if it's in
ก็จะเป็น
solid form like
bulky
coals,
ก็
it's
จะขนส่
more
งค่อนข้าง
bulky,
ลำบาก
so that's difficult to
หรือ
transport.
อีกวิธีหนึ่งคือเป็นอิเล็กตรอน
Or the other method is through
ก็ส่งไปตามสาย
electron,
ถ้าคุณดูรูป
through
แบบทั้งหมดตรงนี้แล้ว
cables.
เนี่ย
So if you look at
คุณ
all
จะเห็น
these
ว่า
fuel forms,
รูปแบบที่ flexible ที่สุด
the
ที่
most
คุณจะขน
flexible
พลังงาน
form
จากจุด A ไปยัง
of
จุด B
fuel
เนี่ย
to transport from
ตัว
point
พลังงานเนี่ย
A to point
ควรจะอยู่ใน
B,
รูปแบบที่เป็นของเหลว
it's the liquid
ถูกไหม
form.
ครับคุณจะใส่ท่อก็ได้
So it can go
คุณ
through
จะ
a
ใส่ถังก็
pipeline,
ได้
or it can go
คุ
in
ณ
a
จะใส่รถ
barrel,
ก็ได้
or it
คุ
can
ณ
be
จะใส่เรือ
transported
ก็ได้
by truck or
แม้กระทั่ง
on ship vessels.
natural gas เนี่ย
Or
เวลา
even
เราขนส่ง
natural
สุดท้าย
gas, when we
ก็ต้อง
transport,
อัดมันเข้าไป
it
400 เท่า
needs
เพื่อจะให้เป็น
to be
liquid form หรือว่าเป็น
condensed into
ก็เป็น
liquid
ของ
form,
เหลว
LNG.
แล้ววิ
That's
ธีที่ดี
liquid
ที่สุดเนี่ย
eventually.
ที่จะขนย้า
So
ย
the
พลัง
best
งาน
way to transport
น่าจะเป็นใน
these
รูปแบบของของเหล
fuel
ว
is in liquid form.
นะครับก็เลยคิดว่าอันเนี้ยถ้าเรามองไปนะครับเราจะต้องไปชดเฉย 80%
So
ของ fossil
we
fuel
need to
เราน่าจะ
offset
พยายามหา
80% of fossil
อะไรที่
fuel.
มาตอบโจทย์ตรงนี้
Therefore, we need to
เพราะฉะนั้นก็เลย
find
เป็นที่
a
มา
solution for
นะครับว่า
that. So this is how
อีเรื่องที่เราคุยกันอยู่ต
it's
ลอดเวลา
either
ก็
what
คือ
we're
กรีน
talking
อิเล็กตร
about
อน
a lot is green
เราผลิต
electron.
อิเล็กตรอนจาก
We
พลังงานหมุนเวียน
produce
นะครับ
electron from
ก็
renewable
จะเป็นกรีน
energy
อิเล็กตรอน
so that we
ถ้าเราจะเอากรีน
achieve
อิเล็กตรอน
green
จากพลังงาน
electron.
หมุน
If
เวียน
we
ก็คือ
were to
ดินน้ำลมไฟ
gain
นะครับ
green
เอาแดดมา
electron from
ทำผ่านโซล่าร์
all
มาเป็นไฟฟ้า
the
เอาลมมา
soil,
เป็นกังหันมาเป็นไฟ
water,
ฟ้าหรือน้ำปั่นไฟเป็นไฟฟ้าหรือ geothermal ต่างๆ
or
เนี่ย
geothermal energy.
เราจะต้องมีการสร้างสมมติแค่ง่าย
Need,
สร้าง
in
เขื่อน
simplest solution, we need
มา
to
ชด
build
เชยเมื่อสัก
dams,
ครู่นะครับ
right? So
220
to
ล้านบาร์เร
offset
ลต่อวันเนี่ย
the 220
เขื่อนประเทศไทยที่ใหญ่ที่สุด
million
คือเขื่อนภูมิพล
barrels per day.
เราต้องสร้าง
So the
เขื่อน
largest dam is Phumipon Dam.
130,000
So we need
เขื่อนภูมิพล
to build
เพื่อจะมาทด
130
แทนพลัง
billion
งานที่เราบริ
Phumipon
โภค
Dam
ใน1 วัน
to compensate
นะครับ
the energy that we consume
แค่นั้นไม่พอ
per
นะครับ
day.
พอเราสร้างเขื่อนแล้ว
Then after
เราต้อง
building
เอาพลังงานตรงนั้น
dams,
มาที่ผู้บริโภค
that
ใช่ไหม
energy
ครับ
has to
จาก
be transported to the
ริมน้
consumers
ำเดินสาย
from the water
เพื่อจะมาให้ถึงคนบริโภคที่อยู่ในกรุงเทพเราจะต้องสร้าง
through pipes,
สายไฟแรงสูง
therefore
อี
transmitted.
ก
We need to
320 ล้านกิโลเมตร สายไฟ 320 ล้านกิโลเมตรถ้าเทียบก็คือเอาสายไฟ
cables
พันรอบโลกเนี่ยนะครับ
as long as
8,000
320 million kilometers.
นั่นคือสายไฟที่เราจะ
So
สร้างเพื่อที่จะ
that's
เรา
8,000
totally
times
shift
the Earth
จาก
conference.
fossil fuels
This is in
เข้าสู่
order to
renewables
shift
เห็นว่ามันเป็น
100% from
hurdle
fossil
ที่
fuel
ค่อนข้างใหญ่
to
นะครับ
renewables.
เพราะฉะนั้น
So that's a big
แทนที่จะเป็น
shift.
green electron
So
วันนี้เราเลย
instead of having
เรา
green
แนะนำ
electron,
คำศัพท์ตัวใหม่ก็คือ
so I'm introducing
clean
a
molecule
new jargon which is
clean
called
molecule ที่เป็นโมเลกุลแทนที่จะเป็นอิเล็กตรอนเป็นโมเลกุลแทนถ้าเราดูสัดส่วนการบ
So
ริ
if
โภค
you
นะ
look
ครับ
at the proportion
ณวันนี้
of consumption,
อย่างที่ผมเรียน liquid
today
ก็ยังอยู่ในฟอร์
so
ม
liquid
94%
is
5% เป็นลักษณะ
94%,
แก๊สฟอร์ม
and
เป็นอิเล็กตรอน
5%
แค่
is in
1%
gas, and only 1%
ไปสู่ net
is
zero จริ
electron.
งๆเนี่ย
So in order to
liquid
achieve
form
net
ก็ยังอ
zero,
ยู่ประมาณสัก
the liquid
65%
form
อันนี้ข้อ
would
มูลจาก
still
IEA
remain
นะครับ
65%.
แล้วก็อาจ
This
จะ
is
เป็น
information
green
from
electron
IEA,
37%
and 27% will be
มัน
green
มีเหตุผลว่า
electron.
ทำไม
There's a
liquid
reason
form เนี่ย
why
เป็นฟอร์มที่ดี
liquid
ที่สุด
form
ในการ
fuels
ทั้งกัก
is
เก็
the
บพลัง
best
งาน
form
เมื่อ
in
สักครู่
order to
เล่าให้ฟังว่าการกักเก็บพลังงานเนี่ยต่อ
contain
น้ำหนักหรือต่อปริมาตรเนี่ย
energy
มากกว่า
So
ของแข็งคือ
per volume,
ลิเธียมไอออนเนี่ย
it's
40 เท่า
actually
แต่
40
efficiency
times
20
better
เท่า
than lithium ion or in
combustion
solid
engine
form.
ก็ประมา
And
ณ
combustion
50%
engine is about 50% efficiency.
แล้วก็คือกักเก็บได้ดีกว่า
So
แล้วก็
it
ขน
can
ส่ง
capture and
ก็ได้ดีก
store
ว่า
much better,
นะครับ
transports
การเคลื่อน
better.
ย้ายต่างๆเนี่ย
All
ก็จะ
the
ได้ดีกว่า
mobility is
นะครับ
much better.
ดังนั้นเรารูปแบบของที่จะมาทดเชย
So in
fossil
order to
fuel
compensate
มีอะไร
or
บ้าง
replace fossil
นะครับ
fuel,
ครีมโมเลกุล
what
ที่ว่านี่มีอะไรบ้าง
the
วันนี้เรามี
existing
ใช้อยู่แล้ว
clean
ในบางบางอย่างนะค
molecules.
รับ
So we also have
Ethanol
that
ที่
in
ผสมเข้าไป
Bangchak. The ethanols
ใน
that is
gasoline
mixed with the
ก็คือ
gasoline
คลีนโมเลกุล
are
นะครับ
clean
เป็น
molecules.
regenerative
So
ที่มาจาก
it's the regenerative
พืช
molecules
นะค
from
รับ
plants.
กำลังวันนี้จะมีคุยกันเยอะพอสมควร
And we're going to talk a lot about today is sustainable fuel, particularly the sustainable aviation fuels, the cooking oil that can be recycled to respond to BCG model, so biocircular and
น้ำ
green.
มันใช้แล้วก็คือเป็นไบโอ
So bio
ใช้
is
แล้ว
the used
ก็คือ
oil,
เอามารีเซอร์
and it can
ก็
be
คือ circular ก็จะเป็น
having
green
recircular
วันนี้จะ
process,
คุยกันเยอะ
and we're going to talk
Up and
about this a
rising
lot
ก็คือ
today.
e-fuel นะ
Then
ครับ
up
e-fuel
and
คืออะไร
rising is
เรารวมถึงว่า
e-fuel.
พาหะนะครับที่
And also
จะไป
the
สู่
vector
พลังงานแห่งอ
that
นา
is
คต
going to
เรา
lead
คิดว่า
to
พลังงานแห่ง
future
อนาคต
fuel
เนี่ย
or
ก็คือ
future
ไฮโดรเจน
energy is
ไฮโดร
hydrogen.
เจนอยู่ในฟอร์มนะครับ
So
เป็นแก๊ส
hydrogen is in
เป็นแก๊ส
gas form.
ขนส่งได้ไหมครับยาก
Can that be
เพราะฉะนั้น
transported?
วันนี้ที่เขาพัฒ
That's
นา
quite
กันก็คือ
difficult.
แอ
So
มโมเนีย
what they're
เป็น
working
พาหะ
on
ในการ
right
ส่ง
now is the
แล้วทำ
green
ยังไงให้ได้เป็น green
ammonia.
นะครับ
And in order
ก็
to achieve green ammonia.
ผมว่าอันนี้เดี๋ยวสักครู่เราคงจะได้เจอแล้วได้คุยกันเยอะนะครับไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่อง
So
ของ
we're going to
ที่เรา
talk
ทำกันอยู่
today a
นะ
lot
ครับ
about what we're
โรงงานที่
doing
บางจาก
at
สร้าง
the
อยู่ข้างหลัง
moment.
นี้นะค
The
รับก็จะเป็
factory
น
that Bangchak
เป็น
is
สเต็ป
building
แรกตร
at
ง
the
นั้น
back
ก็คือ
is the first step to
used
do
cooking
this,
oil
which is
นะครับ
the used
แล้วก็
cooking
รวมถึ
oil
งanimal fat
as
เนี่ย
well as
เรา
animal
pre-heat
fats
แล้วก็เข้ากระบวน
can
การ
be
เพื่อจะทำ
pre-treated
ให้
and
เป็น
go through the process
SAF
in
นะครับ
order to
ห
achieve
รือ
SAF
จะเป็น
or
second
sustainable
gen
aviation
ethanol
fuel
นะครับ
or the
อัน
second
นี้มาจากมัน
generation
หรือจาก
ethanol
molasses อาจจะ
from
มาจากกากไม้
molasses
นะครับเศษไม้
or
หรือ biomass
cellulose
ต่างๆ
or
เข้ากระบวน
biomass.
การหมัก
It
ก็
can
จะสา
go
มารถ
through
ทำเป็น
fermentation
sustainable
process,
fuel ได้เหมือนกัน
and we can also gain
วิธีท้ายสุด
sustainable fuel as
อาจจะ
well.
แพง
The
ที่สุด
last
นะครับ
method
ยากที่
may
สุด
be the most
เราเคย
difficult
ศึกษา
and
มาแล้วก็
expensive
เมเจอร์หลายๆ
through
ฝ่ายก็
our
ศึกษากันก็
research
คือผลิตน้ำมัน
is
จากสา
actually
หร่าย
producing
นะครับ
fuel
ซึ่ง
from
กระ
algae
บวนการ scale
or
up เนี่ย
seaweed.
จะค่อนข้างยากพอสม
So
คว
the
ร
scaling up process is quite challenging.
หรือ
Or
e-fuel คืออะไร
e-fuel.
นะครับ
What is
วันนี้มี
e-fuel?
buzzword กับอันนึงคือ e-fuel
So this is a
แล้ว
new
ถ้าไปดู
buzzword here.
ที่ยุโรป
And if
นะ
you
ครับ
look at
บรัสเซลเนี่ย
the
เพิ่งบอก
Europe
ว่าก่อนหน้านี้
continent,
ตอนแรกบอก
Brussels
2035
said that
จะไม่ให้
in
ขายรถที่ใช้
2035 they'll
liquid
prevent
fuel
the sales of
ที่ใช้
cars
เชื้
or
อเพลิง
vehicles
แล้ว
using
แต่ว่า
liquid fuels.
ตอนนี้ยกเลิกแล้วถ้า
But
ตัวนั้นเป็น e-fuel
They
มันรถที่
will
ผลิตใน
allow
เมืองไท
that
ยเนี่ยจะไปขายยุโรป
if
ได้
it's e-fuel.
ถ้า
So
มันทำมา
Thai
จาก e-fuel
vehicles produced
e-fuel
here
คืออะไรครับ
can actually be
e-fuel
sold
ก็
in
คือ
Europe. What is
เราจับ
e-fuel?
คาร์บอนไดออกไซด์
So we
ในอา
capture
กาศ
carbon dioxide in the
นะครับ
air, in the
แล้วก็ขณะเดียว
atmosphere,
กันเนี่ย
and
เรา
at
ใช้
the
พลัง
same
งานหมุนเวียน
time
เนี่ย
we use
แยก
this
น้ำให้ได้ไฮโดร
renewable
เจน
energy to
แล้วเอาไฮโดร
separate
เจนตัวนี้กับคาร์บอนไดออกไซ
hydrogen
ด์มาเป็น
or the
ไฮโดรคาร์บอน
electrolysis
เป็น
process.
สูตรของของ
So
เหลว
we get
เติมเข้าไป
carbon
ใน
and
รถ
hydrogen
นะครับ
as
ก็จะมีรถ
e-fuel
จากสตุตการ์
that
ที่เริ่ม
can be
ใช้แล้วมั้งครับ
used to power our vehicles.
และ
So
สุด
there
ท้าย
are cars in
ก็คือ
Stuttgart that's
ฟอร์ม
already
ที่
using this.
อย่างที่ผมเรียน
And
เมื่
the
อสักครู่
last
ว่า
form that
เรา
I
จับไน
said
โตรเจนจากอากาศ
earlier
นะ
is
ครับ
we capture
มา
nitrogen from
ไน
the
โตรเจนจากอากาศ
atmosphere.
ถูกแล้วแล้วไฮโดรเจนก็ใช้วิธีการ
Then hydrogen will go through the
Hydrogen
electrolysis
green ammonia
process and then we'll
นะครับ
achieve
เรา
green
สามารถขนส่งได้
ammonia, which
หลังจากนั้น
can be
เอา
transported
hydrogen มาใช้งาน
and then we can use
ก็
hydrogen.
ผมคิดว่าสุดท้าย
So I
อันห
think
นึ่งกลับมาเบสิกก็คือ
we are
พ
going
ลังงาน
back to the
หนึ่งคือ
basics that
พลังงานนั้นเนี่ย
energy
มี energy density
has energy density.
liquid form
The liquid form will really help with that. And transportation of these fuel from one point to another, the best method is in liquid form.
green electron มัน
So green electron is a possible option, but it's not the answer to all. But
เป็นคำตอบที่ช่วย
clean molecules will actually be the right solution for us to achieve net zero.
นะครับว่าถ้า
So
นะครับ220 ล้านบาร์เรลต่อวันเยอะ
if 220 million barrel per day, if we were to replace that,
ฟอร์มที่เป็น
the best form, the liquid form, is pivotal to this transition.
แน่นอนครับจะได้คิดว่า clean molecule
And clean molecules. So introducing you the new buzzword, clean molecules instead of green electron.
คู่กับคาร์บอน
And it has to go along with the carbon capture technology, whether it's e-fuel or green ammonia.
ใช้กระบวนการคาร์บอนแคปเจอร์
It's going to use the carbon capture process and go through the process to have hydrogen through hydrocarbon or to hydrogen.
น่าจะเป็น2เทคโนโลยี
So I think these two technologies will really help this great global transition,
พลังงานที่เราใช้อย่างมหาศาล
and the abundance energy that we use will truly transition to the new form of energy.
มองข้อสังเกตเล็ก
So this is a bits of observation that I can share with you today. Thank you very much.
สูงเลยนะครับขอบคุณมาก
So thank you, Kun Chaiwat. Once again, thank you very much. That was an incredible presentation, and we've learned some new buzzwords as well. What was it? Clean molecules, right? Or in Thai would be clean molecule. So that would be one of the regenerative fuels that we are talking about. And so we've already heard the keynote from Kun Chaiwat. We now see why it's important and why we are using regenerative fuels as the theme of this year's event. And sustainable mobility is also important as well. And now we can see what Bangchak is trying to do, and we're going to build on that in the following sessions. And everything that we are talking about today is all called Greenovations. So there are green innovations that fit in well with our theme, and we're going to stick with green innovation. And now, did you go past through the tunnel when you exited the lift? So that means, did you not pass that? That means I think you climbed up by yourself, right? But if you did pass that tunnel, you would see the reflections and how the regenerative fuels can lead to green ideas, because we want them to be able to regenerate and to be able to reuse and recycle and to create endless energy to help Bangchak move forward, to create new things using green innovations to be more environmentally friendly. And as we've seen the determination of our corporation for the future, we have created a short film to reflect that in the theme of a regenerative spirit.
อบขอเสียงได้นะครับโอ้โห
So please a round of applause for that. I think this is a very good characterization of the identity of Bangchak Group, that we are trying to innovate and use natural methods to find solutions, looking at how to greenovate to regenerate.
ใช้คำนี้นะฮะก็คือเอา verb มาใช้ก่อนคือเรา greenovate กัน
So I think that's a good way forward to create new things using innovations to greenovate to regenerate, and that clip we just saw was a very good representation of that. We saw that they use solar energy, which is something that is readily available, and thank you very much for creating the creatives that helped us make that, and feel free to share that to anyone you know. Next, we are going to move on to another session, but before that, we would like to invite our guests, our speakers, for a group photo.
May I now invite our distinguished guests to join คุณชัยวัฒน์ on stage for photograph session เรียนเชิญทุกท่านเลยนะครับเริ่มตั้งแต่ Her Excellency Mrs. Astrid Emilia Euler Norwegian Ambassador to Thailand Could you please welcome ขอเรียนเชิญนะครับคุณปิ่นศักดิ์สุรสวัสดีนะครับอธิบดีกรมทรัพยากรทางทะเลและชายฝั่งนะครับขอเรียนเชิญคุณสกายคงธรรมผู้ช่วยผู้ว่าการการไฟฟ้าฝ่ายผลิตแห่งประเทศไทยด้วยนะครับพร้อมคุณชัยวัฒน์โควาวิสารัตน์นะครับถ่ายภาพร่วมกันเซสชั่นแรกนะครับบนเวทีก่อนนะครับเรียนเชิญแขกผู้มีเกียรตินะครับ distinguished guest นะครับ to photograph on stage นี่นะครับขอบคุณมากๆเลยนะครับวันนี้ดีใจนะครับวันนี้ Norwegian Ambassador to Thailand นะครับท่านเอกอัครราชทูตนะครับจากนอร์เวย์นะครับอยู่กับเราด้วยนะครับ Her Excellency Mrs. Astrid Emilia Euler นะครับวันนี้ท่านอยู่กับเรานะครับนี่นะครับท่านให้เกียรติเราอย่างมากเลยนะครับขอบคุณอย่างยิ่งเลยนะครับท่านสื่อมวลชนขอทำงานอีกสักเล็กน้อยนะครับและเดี๋ยวลำดับถัดไปนะครับผมจะขอเรียนเชิญ
And next, I would like to invite the speakers and the Bangchak Group executives.
Speakers and panelists and executive on stage to photograph session ขอเรียนเชิญนะครับ Mr. จีหยางลำนะครับ Associate Director Biofuel Research and Analytics S&P Global Commodity Insights เรียนเชิญเพิ่มเติมนะครับเรียนเชิญ Mr. Michael Spivey Sales Director จาก Honeywell UOP เรียนเชิญ Mr. Jeff Caton Accents Commercial Director จาก Asia Pacific ครับหม่อมหลวงรัตสิทธิ์ดิษกุลกรรมการผู้อำนวยการใหญ่บริษัทบริการเชื้อเพลิงการบินกรุงเทพจำกัดมหาชนดร.การเอิญเลียว Head of Technology Airbus Malaysia คุณยงยุทธลูจินตานนท์ครับArea Manager จาก IATA Thailand ดูแลลาวคัมโบเดียและเมียนมาด้วยครับเรียนเชิญคุณอิทธิพรแต้มสุขินหรือคุณแม็กซีนผู้สร้างสรรค์คอนเทนต์สายกรีนครับและวันนี้พิธีกร CEO จากบริษัท Black Dot มาด้วยครับคุณเปอร์สุวิกรมอัมมารนันท์ครับเรียนเชิญบนเวทีนะครับและเรียนเชิญรองกรรมการผู้จัดการใหญ่กลุ่มบริษัทบางจากร่วมถ่ายภาพร่วมกันด้วยนะครับและแต่คุณปฏิวัติทิวสสิทธิ์คุณพัฒภูรีชินกุลกิจนิวัฒน์คุณโชคชัยอาสวะรังสฤษดิ์คุณกฤติพงษ์ลิ่มสุวรรณโรจน์คุณธรรมรัตน์ประยูนสุขคุณบัณฑิตหันษาไพบูลย์และคุณราตรีมณีภาษีผลครับขอกราบเรียนเชิญครับปรบมือเป็นเกียรติได้นะครับถ้าอยากปรบมือครับนี่ครับหลายท่านพยายามจะปรบอยู่เมื่อสักครู่นะครับนี่ครับผมให้สัญญาณได้ครับล่ะครับวันนี้ท่านสื่อมวลชนจะได้ถ่ายภาพนะครับชุดใหญ่เลยนะครับเซตนี้นะครับหลายคนก็มาเพื่อGreenovative นะครับนี่เทคโนโลยีสีเขียวนะครับเราใช้นวัตกรรมมาขับเคลื่อนนะครับ Greenovative
So we're all here to drive our Greenovative initiatives and to join together on our path for regenerative fuels and a sustainable mobility future. So hopefully you will get to learn some things that are new and interesting for you. We've already heard the keynote speaker from Mr. Chaiwat Kowavisarat, Group Chief Executive officer and president of Bangchak Corporation, and now we know why this is important and why we need to continue down this path. And we feel like we need to find some alternatives for energy sources. Of course, Bangchak will continue its existing current businesses until we can fully transition to more sustainable mobility. And Bangchak is always aiming to be the leader in this sector. And there are many important milestones, not just for the company, but for Thailand's journey as well. So thank you everyone once again for participating with us today and being a part of this journey.
ขออะไรเล็กน้อยนะครับเอาละครับช็อตสุดท้ายครับแชร์นี่ครับสวยงามนะครับขอบคุณทุกท่านเลยนะครับวันนี้ดีใจนะครับ
Thank you everyone once again. It is an honor to have Her Excellency Mrs. Astrid Emilia Eller, the Norwegian Ambassador to Thailand, and all of our other representatives from the government, from private sector, and from the media. Thank you once again. Next, we are going to have another interesting keynote speech after Kun Chaiwat already mentioned about the importance of liquid fuels and how versatile they are. And I think this is going to be one of the key factors of success in the future of this sector. But we are going to next listen to some experts in the field. We will start with S&P Global Commodity Insights. We have some insights and knowledge. They do biofuels research and analytics, and they are here to share with us some insights and solutions and technologies that can be used. So we would like to invite the Associate Director from the Biofuels Research Analytics of S&P Global Communitor Insights to talk about global transportation with sustainable fuel markets, Mr. Ji Yang Lam.
Downstream market. He has spent the last 4 years dedicated to the exploration of biofuel, both on domestic front and in the international arena. Mr. Lam, we warmly invite you to share your valuable insight on the revolution in transportation, current and future sustainable fuel, and your perspective on future market update. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ji Yang Lam. เรียนเชิญเลยครับ มาแล้วครับทางด้านนี้ครับ
ขออรุณสวัสดิ์
It's been It's been a very interesting and very well-received event. My name is Jiang. I am a associate director with S&P Global, looking at biofuels. And today we'll be talking about global transportation with sustainable fuel markets. Thank you, Kun Chaiwat, for providing the lay of the land in terms of where we stand and how we are going to move towards this carbonization story. It was very helpful so that I don't have to go through all of that. So, a bit of an agenda today. I'll very quickly go through the introduction, but the meat of my presentation will be our biofuels demand outlook. We will also go into global investments into HEFA, SPK, and/or SAF. Then we will focus a lot on the feedstock story because that's where we are seeing a lot of issues within the industry. There is going to be a feedstock crunch and how the industry is going to have to move around this feedstock crunch in order to meet the global decarbonization goals. I will then finish off with feedstock pricing trends and how the US prices its SAF, and then I'll just summarize it all up towards the end. So, many of you know S&P as the S&P 500. We do also have like price assessments and things like that. I come from the bottom here, market fundamentals, forecasting data. So we do provide market intelligence, we do forecasts, and we do look into all these sort of things in a holistic manner. And that's introduction to S&P. Couple of things that I would like to highlight when it comes to price assessments that we're going to launch pretty soon. One that we have launched recently is the SAF Northwest European price, which is an SS price. The other one down here are the POMI FOB for both Indonesia and Malaysia, and that will be coming in January of next year. So, on to the biofuels demand outlook from S&P Global. On the face of it, the biofuels market is a little bit of, how do I put this? Not very great in terms of our outlook, because there is a lot of feedstock challenges, there is a lot of competition from electrification of vehicles on the road transport sector. So in our outlook at least, ethanol demand when it comes to the road sector, as well as FAME and renewable diesel for the road sector, is going to peak sometime in the mid-2030s. And then eventually decline. Now, this additional ethanol could potentially go into your SAF, which is where this huge growth market is, and where Bangchak is very wisely invested in. So yeah, by 2050, we expect global demand to be about 2.2 million barrels a day. That said, this is very far away from what a lot of the global markets are expecting, particularly with aspirations in Europe, the aspirations in the United States, where they are looking at 70% by 2050. The thing with Europe, though, is that they are looking at a e-fuel target of 35% by 2050 as well, so they are quite limited. Further limiting the feedstock options for Europe has also been the fact that in their legislation, they have specifically said no food crop oils for their sustainable aviation fuel, which means it has to be UCO, it has to be animal fats, or tall oil, or palmy, but no PFAT. United States is a little different. They have, well, this 100% by 2050 is an aspirational target. We expect it to be driven by their soybean oil industry and in addition to using some of their domestic UCO supplies and tallow. In order to meet this, the US has rolled out a couple of initiatives. One, the most recent, has been the Internal Inflation Reduction Act, which in addition to a whole bunch of other investments, focuses on providing tax credits for sustainable aviation fuels and biofuels in the United States. While the current Inflation Reduction Act technically ends in 2020, at the end of 2027, we expect this credit to be extended throughout the forecast period because in order to bridge the price gap between soybean oil and diesel or soybean oil and jet fuel, you will need this form of indirect subsidies. Regionally, the story for Asia has been fairly quiet. The only real big mover has been Japan, which are looking at 10% by 2030. The other markets in the region, South Korea looking at a potential mandate, India looking 1% alcohol to jet by 2050, Indonesia is looking at a 5% SAF mandate by 2025. But these are all relatively low targets compared to what some of the airline alliances are talking about, your Star Alliance, your One World Alliance, all of which have come up to say that they want to do 10% as a group by 2030. The issue with this is that it is up to the airlines within the alliances to figure out where they are comfortable in figuring out what blends they want. So very recently, about 2 weeks ago, the Association of Airlines for Asia Pacific came out the Association for Airlines in the Asia Pacific, which consists of Thai Air, Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific, and so on. They all came out to say that they are going to blend 5% by 2030. Which means that the rest of the alliance will have to figure out where to get the additional SAF. Elsewhere in the world, really there is no mandates, there is no push for it other than the industry. There is also the IATA and ICAO, which all are all pushing for SAF blend mandates. But again, this is up to the airlines to sort of push this, drive this moving forward. So here we have a breakdown of our SAF demand by region. Really, it's a story of Europe again. But as you can see here on the blend rates, global blend rates, we're expecting only about 24%. And again, I have to preface this. This is a feedstock story. We are coming to a feedstock shortage. There is only so much used cooking oil in the world. Investments into alcohol to jet and e-fuels or synthetic fuels is very nascent at the moment. It's not commercially viable as we can see it yet. Furthermore, when it comes to things like synthetic fuels, we have to worry about where the hydrogen is going. Where is it being prioritized? Is it going to be... So in our view, the first market they'll go to will be the energy market, because you need to figure out how to utilize all the excess renewable energy that you're going to build and store it so that you can use it later on. So as a result, 24% globally, led by Europe, North America, Asia here in the dotted line is 18%. That's predominantly going to be led by the OECD markets, Japan, a little China we expect to be ramping up pretty soon because there are some murmurings and some rumors of them making announcements fairly soon. And then for the rest of the world, because again, feedstock shortage, investment shortage, capital shortage, where are they going to get their green hydrogen? That's the issue. So as it stands right now, we see a lot of investments regionally. So the first region I'm going to look at is Europe, right? So in Europe, most of these investments are predominantly driven by the national oil companies and the international oil companies. You have a couple of independents, Neste, very active in the region as well. They too are looking to push forward with their SAF investments. But because this is a mandate-driven thing, where the EU has basically told them, under Refuel EU, you have to meet these targets, otherwise we could potentially penalize you with a 2-time split between jet and SAF, that's where all these investments are coming in. And we've seen a lot of these investments actually being announced and come up leading up to Refuel EU as these companies are figuring out how to enact their decarbonization plans. In the US, as I mentioned earlier, it's a story more of the credits and this indirect subsidies in the form of credit support. You see here on this map, I've shaded 3 states, Washington, Oregon, and California. These have low carbon fuel standards credits, and these basically give you credits based on the carbon intensity of your fuel. More recently, we have also seen a few states, such as the state of Illinois and Maine, come out with sustainable aviation fuel credits, specifically for domestic airlines. So these range from about $1.25 to $1.75 a gallon, which that's a purchase credit, and the LCFS and the RINs and LCFS and the SAF Blenders Tax Credit are production credits. All these investments here, you can see in terms of whether it's SAF or RD or optimized for SAF, have all been for renewable diesel, and that is to sell into the markets in the West Coast. California, for example, 2 weeks ago, they just came out with a statement saying that 60% of the diesel in the state of California is bio-based. That is a number that's unheard of. If you had asked anybody in the industry 5 years ago, prior to the LCFS, if we see blend rates this high, we have been laughed out of the room. Closer home to Asia, investments again around feedstocks, where the feedstock supply is. The only market which is a little bit out of the range is Japan, which have their own 10% blend mandate, as I mentioned before. But China, all of these are independents. You have 1 or 2 that are the big national oil companies, Sinopec, you have, but other than that, it's all independents. EcoCeres is the big one, Sanju, Eco Biochemical, Talita Singh. So all of these are basically players, independent players, who have seen all of this UCO flow towards Europe and to the United States and think, how do we make investments in order to capture that value and go further downstream? Southeast Asia really has been Bangchak, obviously, and Neste Singapore, which made their first renewable diesel investment in 2010. So when they started their plant in 2010, everybody was laughing at them. Why are you spending €1 billion building this plant when there is no demand for it? Now they're reaping the benefits because they managed to sign their supply agreements for their feedstocks, and they are making money hand over fist at the moment. Most recently, in about May or June of this year, they started streaming their SAF plant, which is about 1.2 million tons. But I have to remind people that while this circle seems rather big right now, that 1.2, 1.3 million tons roughly translates to about 19,000 barrels a day. in the oil space, 19,000 barrels a day for Singapore. If the Singapore government, for some reason, decided that tomorrow they wanted to do a 10% SAF plan mandate, that's the Neste plant. So there's still a long way to go in terms of building out capacity in order to meet our decarbonization targets. So here we have a hypothetical global production versus projected demand. And this hypothetical global production is if all of the jet cut from these HEFA plants was produced and not blended into the diesel pool, this is how much sustainable aviation fuel from the HEFA pathway that you can get. We do have other pathways here, but as I mentioned before, very nascent. Some PTL, some alcohol to jet, but by and large, it's all HVO and all HEFA. We are okay moving up into 2025, but then once we get closer to Corsia 26, 27, we do see this gap, this spread where in terms of speculative, and when we say speculative, it's plants that haven't broken ground yet, these plants might be able to fill the gap, and based on all the capacity that's coming up, it most probably will. But as it stands right now, we are coming up to a shortage in 2027. So we've talked about demand, we've talked about supply, and now I'm going to talk about why we are so bearish in terms of our demand outlook. What we have here is global fuel sector lipids demand, and so the bar charts are full crop oils, waste-based feedstocks, and novel seed oils, and we also have a yet to find. The lines show FAME lipids demand and HEFA lipids demand, so HEFA, your renewable diesel, your SAF. As we go towards 2050, even towards 2030 and 2025, we are coming up to a yet to find where is this additional seed oil, where this additional lipids going to come from? There is only so much used cooking oil in the world. And furthermore, with the used cooking oil story, there's the question most recently in the EU where is this used cooking oil actually used cooking oil, or is it some used cooking oil and you put some PFAD and some palm oil into it? There's a huge concerns around it. There's a way around it. You get ISCC certified. You get some form of certification to be able to go, okay, we can sell this into the European market. But there are cargoes coming out of China which both the Americans and the Europeans have turned away because they say, look, your free fatty acid content is a bit low. It's a bit suspicious. We don't want to touch it. But this feedstock crunch here can be resolved using a few solutions, and I'll go into that a little bit. So in terms of world SAF supply by pathway, we do see that by 2050 it's going to be about a third of each. 1/3 power to liquids, 1/3 ATJ, 1/3 HEFA. And again, this is a feedstock story. Some of other market participants are thinking that we might be able to meet our net zero targets, but they are really banking on your power to liquids. So when it comes to the life cycle analysis of HEFA, Bangchak has been focused a lot on used cooking oil, but what I'd like to draw your attention to is like the seed oils here. The seed oils and the novel seed oils. So the seed oils, what you have here is your final carbon intensity after you take into account the core carbon intensity and the indirect land use change adjustments. Now, the indirect land use change adjustments can possibly change because this does not take into account things like carbon management. Do you plant cover crops such as Carinata, Camelina in the off seasons? Do you use other forms of carbon management like not tilling? That will bring down your carbon intensity potentially below the 50% carbon greenhouse gas reduction target. In our estimates, we are expecting soybean oil in the US specifically to fall somewhere in the line of maybe 35 to 40 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per megajoule. But that's why we are saying this yet to find story can be, we can bridge that gap, but we need to figure out how the carbon accounting works, or we need to be able to plant more novel seed oil crops, or find a way to extract more UCO, which is actually UCO. I have slightly under 4 minutes, so I'll finish off with prices and what's happened in the price markets in terms of the feedstocks. We've seen in recent months that feedstock prices have sort of decoupled between the US and the rest of the world when it comes to things like used cooking oil and soybean oil. And this has been predominantly due to this ramp up in capacity of HVO in the United States, where more and more renewable diesel players are buying up your soybean cargoes, buying up your used cooking oil cargoes, which has decoupled it from global prices. You can see the dotted lines are all the used cooking oil prices, and in general, prior to 2022, they all sort of trended together, and granted, they have been appreciating to seed oil prices. But after the Black Sea grain agreement, due to the Russia-Ukrainian war, you can see that American UCO prices have started to hold a premium to the rest of the world. And this is because they are buying all of these cargoes up. In fact, they're starting to import Chinese UCO cargoes as well, 200,000 tons, last I checked. So moving forward, what we see is that because you have all these credit support in the United States, there will be a decoupling, and they will start to soak up more used cooking oil cargoes from the rest of the world. Mexico, parts of Africa, across the Atlantic Basin. And really, this is the story that we're keeping track of for the next 12 to 18 months. So the last point I'd like to present is how we calculate the US West Coast SAF value in terms of where we think the fair value of SAF is based on the credits that are being offered by the US federal government. So you have CARB, which is the California Energy Resources Board, LA Jet 1 price. You net off your adjustments, so the weighted average RINs. So in order to qualify for your D4 RINs or D3 RINs, you have to pay into the RIN pool. We also factor in density. You add back the value for the credits, your LCFS credit, your D4s, your BTCs, your CFPCs, and then you add on the byproduct credits in order to get you your SAF value. And then in order to see if it's profitable, you look at your SAF value, you net off your feedstock costs, your OPEX, your CAPEX, and your SAF margins. I have a minute and a half, so I better run through this quickly. And this is basically how we are going to sum it all up. So this is how the value of SAF is, the SAF is valued based on tallow with a carbon intensity of 33.5. We used tallow because it was the first pathway approved by the California Energy Resources Board, although more recently they have approved things like DCO, they have approved used cooking oil as well. And really that impacts, one, your LCFS RIN, and only your LCFS credit. The lower the carbon intensity, the higher the LCFS credit. Going towards 2023, we see that the story also, you have improved, you have improved a little bit, but again, this is spot feedstock costs, spot market, feedstock prices as it exists on the spot market. Had you been in the game 2 years ago and bought it when it was half the price, you're on money, you're on the black. So for a new entrant in the United States market right now, it's a little bit bearish. So to summarize in 10 seconds, yeah. I have 5 seconds, so thank you so much for your time. I'll be around for questions later.
Thank you, Mr. Ji Yang Lam, for your kind giving our information and summary. That's so stunning. Thank you so much for giving the presentation here. ดีใจนะครับได้เห็น
So we are very glad to hear about this type of information. I see a lot of people taking pictures, or maybe you're doing a selfie, I don't know. But we've seen some visual representations, and we see the note-taking in front as well, as I remind you that we have a finalized artwork at the end of the day. So next we are going to talk about another issue. Since if you've been following the news, we created some stirs in the past year because we set up or founded a new company, BSGF. What is BSGF? We are moving into the sustainable aviation fuel market, or SAF or SAF as we've heard. What that means is we're using used cooking oil and transforming that into aviation fuel for sustainable aviation. And that's very impressive and also brave. And we are the one and only company in Thailand doing this right now. You might have seen the booth in the front, Thot Mai Ting, which is the using frying oil for flying. And that's the concept of using used cooking oil for sustainable aviation fuel. And we do have someone who is working with BSGF or Bangchak Phrakanong that is creating SAF, partnering with us. You might have already heard of them before, Honeywell. Honeywell UOP is a leading renewable technology company in the United States, and they have honored us today. We have a representative from Honeywell to talk to us about sustainable aviation fuel. We have Michael Spivey, Sales Director of Honeywell UOP.
Has traveled from Malaysia to share with us and the extensive experience that Honeywell UOP has had in SAF technology. His experience spans across the Asia Pacific region from Korea, Japan to Southeast Asia, and also Australia and New Zealand. May I now invite Mr. Michael Spivey to address a total solution for low carbon intensity renewable fuel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Okay, so thank you very much and good morning. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about how Honeywell UOP is supporting the decarbonization of our world, and in particular how we can support our customers to develop technologies and move towards meeting the expectations, in particular for SAF and other low carbon fuels. And so I really appreciate kind of the scene setting that's been done by Kun Chaiwad and Mr. Yum from S&P. I think we will probably look at the market side in a little bit more favorable way than S&P did. Perhaps we're a little bit more optimistic. As a technology provider, I think we have to be a little bit. But without wanting to go over the same comments and the very, very thorough analysis that was provided by S&P, I just maybe like to reiterate that UOP and Honeywell, we see a great opportunity for SAF and increasing markets. Currently, limited mandates and incentives around the world, but that is expected to grow and extend and stabilize over the next several years as CORSIA comes into play in 2027 in particular. And as already has been mentioned, the expectations currently for SAF growth far outstrip the potential feedstocks of some of the more traditional ways that we have made SAF today, including used cooking oils and other non-edible oils, fats and greases. So really the need for a suite of different solutions, a suite of different economically viable technologies to meet this growing demand is really critical. And that is where Honeywell UOP comes in, right? And that's where we are working to innovate and try and create technologies that can hopefully help turn my S&P colleague here a little bit more bullish on SAF for the future. Okay. So I will now just summarize and go through some of the technologies and the pathways that UOP is developing for the production of SAF. So if we look on the far left side, these are all the typical or potential feedstocks for SAF. Up until now, the main focus has been on the production of SAF from fats, oils, and greases, including used cooking oils, palm byproducts, soybean, other non-edible oils, and beef fats. And this is primarily driving the current production of SAF probably for the next few years. Beyond these fats, oils, and greases, we are now looking at other pathways such as biomass. Biomass can be utilized to make second-generation ethanol as one pathway, or as an opportunity to create pyrolysis oil that can be fed into existing infrastructure in the refining and petchem space, which is really where UOP is focused on. Challenges with biomass include the availability of biomass in one location, so quite a dispersed supply chain that needs to be managed, and then the handling and transportation of that biomass is also a challenge that we're trying to overcome. Ethanol is another potential feedstock that many customers are looking at around the world. A particular abundance of ethanol in places like America and Latin America, and also some ethanol production also here in Thailand that could be potential. Again, some potential question marks about the competition versus the food chain. But as we saw in S&P's presentation, the current ethanol production that is utilized for gasoline is expected to decline over the next couple of decades, and so that presents a potential opportunity for that ethanol to be rerouted for SAF production. And then finally, CO2, and CO2 is really a feedstock that has a significant abundance and a significant potential for SAF production. But the challenges with that are the thermostability of CO2, and then also the costs for green hydrogen production to be able to produce that SAF. But I'm happy to say that the one link in the chain that will not be a problem to make these products will be the technology, because the technology is already available, the technology is already commercially ready, commercially proven, and ready to go, and that is what UOP can provide. So our eco-fining units, which is a development of our technology from our traditional hydroprocessing technology in the refining space, has been in development for the last 25 plus years at UOP, and we have more than now 30 years of commercial operation, more than 25 years of commercial operating data. This takes a wide variety of fats, oils, and greases and produces high-quality drop-in fuels such as SAF. We have more than 40 licensed units, 40 projects around the world, including 9 in operation, probably 10 soon before the end of the year. And in Asia in particular, UOP will probably hit its 15th project by the end of this year, which shows us, even despite the fact that there is no specific mandates except for Japan in Asia, there's still a significant interest in developing SAF projects in this region. And in particular, we're very, very, very excited and very, very honored to be Bangchak's technology partner for their first SAF production unit, which will be the first SAF production facility in Thailand. And so we're very, very excited to support our partners in making that project a reality. The next pathway that UOP is looking at is our ethanol to jet technology. And so ETJ technology really looks at the same 3 building blocks, same 3 process steps, regardless of which technology you produce. We need to take the ethanol, dehydrate that ethanol into an ethylene, a bioethylene product, which also then gives potential opportunity for that bioethylene to be utilized for petrochemical options. Then the next 2 process steps to make SAF consist of oligomerization and dimerization, which is essentially taking that ethylene molecule and extending it out and lengthening it to the length of a carbon molecule for SAF, and then our final hydrogenation process that allows us to fine-tune and tweak our SAF to meet the specifications for the ASTM fuels. And one of the key things with UOP and with Honeywell for our ETJ process is that this is all UOP tech. All 3 blocks are design technology from Honeywell UOP. All the catalysts, all of the products inside that box are supplied by us, and so we provide a single point accountability, single point of contact for the entire chain from ethanol to SAF. And because we can do this, we also then look at how we can tightly heat integrate between all these 2 steps. Because as S&P mentioned in their presentation, one of the key elements that we want to control here is the carbon intensity of that final product. Now, the vast majority of that carbon intensity is determined by the feedstock. But what we do not want is then the processing of that feedstock to add significant additional carbon intensity on top. And so that's where UOP comes in to really innovate and develop our processes so that we are making that minimal additional impact to the carbon intensity across the processing of ethanol to SAF and all of our processes. And for all these three production steps, these are all based on commercially ready, commercially proven technologies. And so we have taken our learnings and experiences from 100 plus years in refining and several comparable technologies, and then adapted and amended those technologies for the purpose of making SAF from ethanol. So you can be comfortable and confident that this is a tried and true solution that is low risk. So just to update, UOP's commercial experience in the ethanol to jet space, we launched this technology about a year ago, just over a year ago now, officially into the market. And we've had significant interest and done some significant work with a variety of customers across the world, including here in Asia. And we were very, very excited to have our first 2 commercial projects signed within the last year, including a project with Summit in the US. And this project is currently expected to be the largest ETJ production facility in the world. And so we're very, very excited. Very, very excited with that project, and that one hopefully should be operational within the next 2 years. And then you can also see on the right side of the slide that we're also then commercializing another project with a company called Gram Bio. And this project is of a smaller capacity and more of a demonstration scale. But I think one of the items that I really wanted to highlight from this is that we have a broad spectrum of potential capacities for this technology, from smaller demonstration scale up to huge commercial scale technologies. And so really the flexibility and the variability of capacity is not a limitation for our technology, only whether we can make it economically viable with our customers. So next, I wanted to talk about how UOP and Honeywell is working on e-fuels and converting CO2 to aviation fuel, which is really kind of the final goal, if you will, the holy grail that everybody's trying to get to because of such the abundance of potential feedstock, at least on the CO2 side, and the kind of how this flanges together with the need to kind of decarbonize and utilize technologies such as carbon capture to decarbonize other areas of industry. So how can we utilize that CO2 and transform it into a valuable product? So making e-fuels or making e-SAF really, regardless of technology, kind of starts the same way. We need to utilize a CO2 source likely from carbon capture, as well as green hydrogen. Now, up until now, the vast majority of kind of the development or looking at eSAF has focused on utilizing Fischer-Tropsch technologies and then hydrocracking of that FT products to make SAF. But UOP and Honeywell, we're looking at this in a different way, and we're utilizing our methanol to olefins technology to really drive a more selective, a more efficient, and maybe a less wasteful way to make SAF from CO2 and green hydrogen. And so really the process steps in our process are taking CO2 and green hydrogen, synthesizing that to e-methanol. Now, e-methanol by itself is a fungible, tradable commodity that has its own value. But once you can then take that e-methanol all the way to SAF by utilizing a few process steps that we have developed. The first one being our methanol to olefins technology. So this is a technology that is already commercially proven. We have 9 operating units, MTO units in China. Now these units were originally designed to take in a coal gasification application, and now we are switching that to the eSAF route by taking that e-methanol from CO2 and hydrogen. And then we utilize a very, very similar oligomerization and hydrogenation process that we utilize for the ethanol to jet technology to then finally convert that into our SAF process, SAF product, excuse me. So as you can see on the slide as well, our broader Honeywell portfolio also can have significant other impact in the wider value chain for SAF, including control systems, including our carbon capture technology, hydrogen purification for green hydrogen. So really, Honeywell UOP can provide more than just a part of this solution, and a broader part of the overall value chain for ESAF. So as I mentioned, the advantages of taking the e-methanol route for eSAF versus the Fischer-Tropsch, is really that we have significant commercial experience in all stages. It has the opportunity to provide what we call a hub and spoke model, so you can have multiple locations where you're producing e-methanol from green hydrogen, and then those sources can be aggregated, including methanol made from waste to energy sources as well, or even existing methanol sources, to be able to get an economy of scale to the methanol to olefins section. Speed to market, as we mentioned before, this is already we already have multiple commercial units, and again, utilizing this technology, we really limit the overall impact of our process on the overall carbon intensity, and really CO2 being that the lowest CI potential feedstock to be able to make the lowest overall carbon SAF reduced by almost 88% compared to conventional jet fuel made with fossil fuels. So this technology again is another technology that we have recently launched in the last year. We also have one commercial unit that we have signed with a company called HIF, for High Innovation Fuels in the US, and we're looking forward to the first commercialization of this technology in the not too distant future. Lastly, and with the 3 minutes that I have left, I wanted to talk a little bit more about our UOP's solution for biomass. And for me, this is the most exciting, considering our location, considering Southeast Asia and the potential access to a wide variety and a large source of cellulosic biomass. Our ALDER process combined with our RTP process could be a real game changer for this region and unlock a huge potential in feedstock to be able to make renewable fuels. So UOP has commercialized our RTP unit, which is our rapid thermal processing unit. This is a pyrolysis technology that takes dry agricultural biomass and converts this into what we call a biocrude. UOP has then collaborated with a company called ALDER Fuels, based in the US, and invested in helping develop a technology to be able to then stabilize that biocrude so that it can be transported and then processed in a refinery or in an eco-fining unit or a HEFA process unit, and unlock another potential feedstock for the purposes of SAF production. And one of the key elements of this technology as well is the carbon retention. So one of the main challenges that we have with some other biomass technologies is that when we convert that biomass into CO2 or to other products, we lose a lot of that carbon from the process through vent gases or other non-desirable products. So this process retains a significant amount of that carbon and reduces the overall waste. So the real challenge with this technology in the past has been after we pyrolyze the biomass, the resultant oil is incredibly unstable, very difficult to handle, and very challenging then to process in a refinery or another process unit to be able to make fuels. And so the solution really has been our development with ALDA that provides that ability to stabilize that oil, treat that oil so that it can be then transported and processed in a much larger proportion inside a refinery unit, or as I mentioned, an SAF eco-fining unit, for example. And one of the key real elements, and one of the things that I'm really excited about this technology, is that it's very self-contained. So these can be small units located at the biomass source. And so then we can process that biomass close to the biomass location, create a stabilized oil that can then be aggregated into a centralized processing location at greater volumes and a greater economy of scale. So very excited to get this process moving. So lastly, and with the few seconds that I have left, SAF for us is our number one topic really at UOP at the moment. We're investing a significant amount of our efforts and resources in developing this technology, and we have a proven record of successful commercialization of technology across the refining petchem space, as well as SAF in particular with our eco-fining technologies. And we have as with all typical UOP processes, we provide a one-stop shop of catalysts, of technology, of products and equipment to provide a single point of responsibility, single point of accountability, and a close partnership with our customers to develop and create and commercialize a successful project. So thank you very much for your time. Apologies for going about 20 seconds over. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you about how Honeywell UOP is working in this space, and looked lovely to take some questions at the appropriate time. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Spivey from Honeywell UOP. Thank you for being the great partnership with Bangchak Corporation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also provide the information of solution SAF นะครับจำชื่อนี้ไว้ให้ดีเลยนะครับมันคืออนาคตของ
Remember this because this is going to be the future of aviation. So for renewable or sustainable air travel, we're going to have to pay more attention to SAF and SAF. So we've already heard one of our experts who are working with Bangchak right now from Honeywell, but we have another expert who is going to talk about the technologies that can help us with sustainable mobility and aviation with over 20 years of experience in the petrochemical industry as well as in renewable sides of the industrial sector. So we have Mr. Jeff Caton, the Commercial Director of Asia Pacific from ASENS, who is going to talk to us about the different technologies that can be used as solutions for energy transition by using innovative technologies.
Malaysia, and he very kind to fly to Bangkok to share us the ASENS solution of energy transition by innovative technology. May I invite Mr. Caton on stage, please? เชิญเลยนะครับ
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to Bangchak for inviting ASENS to present on our technologies for production of SAF. Not only SAF, we also need to make sure we talk about renewables in the context of renewable diesel, feedstocks for renewable petrochemicals, things like this. So our technologies can be applied in those areas as well. I apologize in advance. A lot of the themes I'm going to say throughout my presentation have already been mentioned, so I'll try not to dwell on those points, so I might fast forward on a few items. I do speak very quickly. So please accept my apologies for that. If there's any questions after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to Axens. We're happy to have dedicated sessions on our technologies. These slides will be handed over to all the participants as well for more information. So please feel free to follow up with Axens with anything. If you don't know who Axens is, if you've never heard of us, we are a technology licensor, very similar to Honeywell UOP. We have experience with Bangchak in the refinery here with a few of our licensed technologies already operating today with good success. We are a 100% subsidiary company of IFPEN. IFPEN is the French Petroleum Institute. The EN refers to new energies. So IFPN has been around since the 1940s, developing technologies in upstream, refining petrochemicals, but now more and more we shift our technology and our research and development efforts into the energy transition space. Specifically for biofuels and biotech, we have over 40 years of experience. You can see the business areas that we're into. Still today, we're still heavily involved in refining and petrochemicals. In fact, 80% of our revenues today are still driven in those traditional foundational areas. But in the business development side of things, 80% of my activities are focused on the new energy transition space. So again, SAF, renewables, carbon capture, hydrogen. A little bit of our footprint that we have. I like to point this slide here. Very similar to what Mike mentioned for Honeywell UOP. Axens is your partner throughout the life cycle of a project. So we are there from the conceptual feasibility stage of the project, helping our customers look at the technical feasibility, the economic feasibility of the project, going all the way through the life cycle process design, licensing, providing catalyst and proprietary equipment, providing training, commissioning and startup support, and then ongoing technical services support. So in fact, here in the region, in our Kuala Lumpur office, we have over 20 technical services engineers who are continuously providing our support to our customers in the Southeast Asia and Oceania region. How we're transitioning into the new decarbonized energy space. We're helping our customers in the area of energy efficiency. So this is really focused on existing assets, so refineries, petrochemical plants, applying studies, heat optimization, new proprietary equipment, reactor internals, better performing catalysts to actually make the processes more energy efficient and reduce the CO2 footprint. This also applies to any new unit that we design. This is where we're focused today for this presentation is renewable low carbon fuels. We're also involved on the hydrogen transportation side. So we talked about green ammonia earlier. We're actually involved more on the liquid organic hydrogen carrier, which is another methodology of transporting green hydrogen overseas long distances. Carbon capture as well. We're focused on pre-combustion carbon capture and post-combustion carbon capture. E-fuels, which we're going to talk about today. We also have technologies heavily involved in circular resources. So everything from plastics recycling, so advanced chemicals, plastics recycling, spent lubricant oil recycling, tire recycling. These are areas that we're involved in as well. And then on the final right-hand side, new technologies that we've acquired in the area of air treatment, biogas treatment, and wastewater treatment. Okay, so now we jump into our renewables, low carbon fuels and chemicals portfolio. We do have technology on the renewable oils and fats side. So again, your UCO, your POME, tallows. We can either go through our vegan HVO HEFA technology, which is a dedicated on-purpose technology for processing of renewable oils and fats, or we also can implement co-processing in a refinery. So this is taking a certain percentage of renewable-based feedstocks and co-processing them along with fossil oil through an existing hydrotreating unit in a refinery. We like to say this is kind of the low-hanging fruit. This is the easiest way to get some renewables production in a refinery is co-processing, generally speaking. Vegan would be the next one that obviously we've talked about. We see the big wave of projects in the area of HVO and HEFA. Then we get into biomass. So biomass Axens is focused in the area of bio-T-fuel, which is for the gasification of biomass, and then Fischer-Tropsch and hydroconversion of the Fischer-Tropsch condensates and liquids. So that's one process that we see. We see interest, people are studying, but the technology, we don't lie about this. It's a very CapEx operating cost intensive way to get to renewable fuels. It will come someday, but it's still at the early stages of study. The other pathway we talk about for biomass is through 2G ethanol production. So Axens is offering our Futurol technology, which I'll talk a little bit more about, for taking lignocellulosic biomass, anything from woody biomass, grassy biomass, any variety of those feedstocks to produce 2G ethanol. That 2G ethanol can then be used along with 1G ethanol in any one of our processes that we have here. The first one is ATOL, which is for ethanol dehydration. So this is ethanol to bioethylene. That also is our first step of jetanol, where we go ethanol to bioethylene, oligomerization, dimerization to sustainable aviation fuel. And we also have a new technology, BioButterfly, which is for taking ethanol to biobutadiene. And that project was done in conjunction with Michelin in their objective to make a renewable circular tire. And then on the bottom, we have our e-fuels route, which we'll talk a little bit about today. I won't go through all these bullet points, but the key message here is this is not something that's just new to Axens. We've actually been doing this transition and working on R&D and technology development in the area of biorenewables since the 1990s. So really starting with fatty acid methyl ester technology with Esterifip H technology. And then you can see all the milestones for the technology development for the other pathways. So Futurol, we'll talk about it really quickly. This is our 2G ethanol technology again. We are taking our biomass. Again, this can be woody, grassy biomasses, agricultural residues, energy crops. So in this region, empty fruit bunch, bamboo, quinoa, bagasse, all of these are potential feedstocks for Futurol technology. We take that feedstock and we do a pre-treatment step where we're actually doing what's called a steam explosion. We're basically popcorning the feedstock open, accessing the C5, C6 sugars. A slipstream of that goes to our biocatalyst production, where we actually grow our enzymes and yeast in situ. So we do not have to have continuous delivery of enzymes and yeast into the process. You do a starter kit, and then you essentially grow those yeast and enzymes in the process. The remainder of the feedstock goes to our hydrolysis and fermentation, along with the yeast, enzymes and yeast, where we do the hydrolysis and fermentation. So making the C6 sugars more accessible, C5 sugars are already there, and then we do the fermentation process, distillation, and then we get our products. So of course we're making 2G ethanol. We also have byproduct that goes to stillage, where we can do biogas collection off of the wastewater treatment and use that as energy for the process. We have lignin, which we can also use in the process to produce steam and electricity to provide the energy necessary for the process. And then we have a biogenic CO2 source that can be used for food and beverage industry or other applications. So a couple of key fundamentals to this technology that are beneficial is, again, the in situ enzymes and yeast production. And then the fact that we have hydrolysis and fermentation in a single pot makes for a lower CapEx design overall for 2G ethanol production. This is just some pictures of our pre-commercial plant. In fact, when Axens goes and develops a technology, we do pilot scale research and development all the way into semi-industrial demonstration. So we call this pre-commercial, but in fact, this is our pre-treatment process, which is designed for 100 tons per day of biomass treatment, which was operated for 3 years on all different ranges of biomass from around the world. And then we have our pilot facility, which is the actual enzymes, yeast growing, the fermentation process, distillation as well. And these facilities are always available. We welcome guests to come to France and visit these facilities. We're happy to show them. And this is just showing a few of the feedstocks that we've tested there. A couple of ongoing commercial experiences related to Futurol. We have the project with Allotrope in California in the US. This project is taking some agricultural waste from the almond industry, but also forest residues. So if you know about the California wildfires, this is taking the forest residue off the bottom of the forest and actually using it to produce 2G ethanol. So a little bit of benefit in two ways. This project is expected to start up in 2027, and it will produce 60 KTA of ethanol. There are some public press releases on this. Sumitomo Corporation is actually an investor in this project. The second project is called NACR. This one, Axens is actually a co-investor with in France. And the idea is to collect different agricultural waste from a 75-kilometer radius to ultimately produce 30 KTA of 2G ethanol, as well as the byproducts biomethane, biogenic CO2, and lignin, which all those byproducts will have value and be valorized. And this project will also start up in 2027. If we move on to ATOL, which is our ethanol dehydration. So we're talking about 2G ethanol feedstock or 1G ethanol feedstock. Mixture of the two, doesn't matter. We are going to take that ethanol and dehydrate it into our major product, which is bioethylene. You can see here a bit of a process flow scheme. This technology was developed since early kind of 2010, 2012 timeframe in conjunction with our mother company IFPN and also Total Energies. The first commercial reference was licensed to Sumitomo Chemical in Japan, and that unit's been started up and successfully passed all performance guarantees. So you can see some pictures of that unit with Sumitomo. A couple of key features of our dehydration process is the fact that our ethanol feed, we can accept a very high variety of different ethanol feedstocks. Contaminants coming in are no issue. We can design for that. Water content coming in with the feedstock is no issue, so it doesn't need to be water-free ethanol. In fact, the first step of our process, we're actually mixing that ethanol with some recycled water from the quench column. So we actually operate our reactor system in a dilute water phase. Other benefits is we have an innovative heat recovery system, which is making this a very energy-efficient process. The selectivity towards ethylene is very, very high, so actually we have a simple purification section. We don't require a C2 splitter, which is one of the benefits of this technology. Another recent announcement for this technology is with Cyclus in the Netherlands. So this is going to be producing 100 KTA of bioethylene that will be used for the petrochemical feedstock. Next, we move on to jetanol. So first reason why we go to ATOL is because it's the dehydration step to produce bioethylene. You need that to then go on to jetanol to produce sustainable aviation fuel. So very, very similar to Honeywell UOP. We're doing the very, very same steps, which is dehydration with our ATOL technology, oligomerization with our technologies Dimersol E and polynaphtha, which have been practiced for decades in the refining industry. So for those of you who don't know, it's very common in refining to take light olefins, C2, C3, C4 olefins off of an FCC and dimerize and oligomerize those into transportation fuels. So in fact, we're doing the same thing here that we've been doing for decades in refining. We're just getting our ethylene source from ethanol to ethylene versus from an FCC cut. And then we're doing hydrogenation and fractionation to produce our sustainable aviation fuel, which is the primary product. There also is the very high hydrocarbon yield, so the remaining byproducts are renewable naphtha and renewable diesel. So again, very high value products as byproducts. If we talk about commercial references, we have actually our alliance partner with this technology is Gevo in the US. So Gevo is a major ethanol producer, butanol producer. They have 2 ongoing projects right now. You can see the capacity for SAF using corn ethanol. The next project that's public release information is with Idemitsu in Japan. They'll build a SAF unit that will produce 80 KTA. We have 2 additional confidential awards. This one will be announced in press very soon. And already, even on this list, it's outdated because we've had, I think, at least 1 additional award that I know of in the US. In terms of overall ethanol projects, whether it's Futurol, ATOL for dehydration, or jetanol for sustainable aviation fuel, you can see we're quite diverse. There's a lot of activity in the US. We start to see a lot, especially in Japan, and then more in France for bioethylene specifically. Okay, that was kind of the bio-based feedstocks. Now we transition to e-fuels. Our e-fuels route is a little bit different from what Honeywell UOP. They're talking about methanol synthesis from CO2 and then doing methanol to olefins, olefins to sustainable aviation fuel. We are focused on CO2 capture. We actually do have a DMX technology for carbon capture, but I want to point out here our e-fuels is not exclusive to that DMX technology. DMX can be used for capture of CO2 from an atmospheric flue gas. So this could be a power plant, cement factory, refinery operations, anything that has atmospheric flue gas, we can use DMX for. However, the CO2 source could also come from direct air capture technology. It could also come from biogenic CO2. So if you have any CO2 source, that can be used as feedstock. The next step of the process we go through is reverse water gas shift. So we're actually using green hydrogen. We talked a lot about green hydrogen. So the green hydrogen comes in with the CO2. In that reverse water gas shift, we're pushing out CO and water as the product. That CO then goes as syngas to Fischer-Tropsch, where we're producing Fischer-Tropsch condensates and liquids. Those, though, again, to go to upgrading, which is simple refinery-based hydrotreating, hydrocracking, to ultimately produce sustainable aviation fuel. Not only sustainable aviation fuel, we can target whatever product you want. If you want sustainable aviation fuel, that's what we maximize. If you want renewable diesel, we can do that. If you want renewable naphtha for petrochemical feedstock, that can be done as well. So this technology for e-fuels is actually based on technology bricks that have been developed whether a long time ago or more recently. Again, I mentioned our DMX technology for carbon capture, which has just recently been developed and then demonstrated at an ArcelorMittal steel mill in France. So this technology is ready for, again, flue gas CO2 capture. This is the reverse water gas shift, so going again from CO2 to CO. So this technology has been developed in conjunction with a company called Paul Worth. You can kind of Google this and see the developments between Axens and Paul Worth in the area of reverse water gas shift. This was developed on a very, very fast-track timeline because this was a missing, one of the missing holy grail, for lack of a better words, in terms of e-fuels production. And then on the Fischer-Tropsch side and the upgrading side, this has been practiced for years. So for those of you who are familiar with gas to liquids market, Fischer-Tropsch has been utilized for a long time. Hydrotreating, hydrocracking for the upgrading unit. Again, it's typical refining-based technologies that have been employed for many years. We have our technology, which is purification of the syngas, Fischer-Tropsch upgrading, called Gas-L. So we're utilizing Gas-L in this e-fuels route. Gas-L can also be used for gas to liquid, waste to liquid, so municipal solid waste, or biomass with our BioT fuel technology for biomass gasification, Fischer-Tropsch, and onwards. You can see here some of the demonstration units. This is our Gas-L unit that's in an E&I refinery in Italy, where we're demonstrating the Fischer-Tropsch side of it. This is our pilot plant that we have for upgrading, but this is really not necessary to show because, again, all refineries have hydrotreaters and hydrocrackers, or many refineries have hydrotreating and hydrocracking. So this is proven technology. On the e-fuels, I'll just say that it's a very, very fast growing market. If I went back a few slides, you know, we talk about HEFA, HVO technology first, co-processing first, low-hanging fruits. Then we see alcohol to jet. Maybe 1 year ago, 2 years ago, Axens would have thought that BioT fuel, biomass gasification, Fischer-Tropsch, and then to fuels would be the next wave. But now we see e-fuels starting to come as really the predominant wave. And as mentioned by S&P, this is largely driven by the mandate by the European Parliament that so much of the SAF is going to have to be made of synthetic e-fuels. So Axens, what we bring is a large range of technology solutions. So really any type of renewable-based feedstock, circular feedstock, we have technology solutions for to process into high-value products. They're de-risk technologies. So many of these technologies are based on decades-long proven technologies, or they're new technologies that have gone through proper research and development at bench scale, pilot scale, semi-industrial scale to bring them to the stage of commercialization. And we view ourselves as a unique partner in that, yes, we provide front-to-back guarantees. We provide proprietary equipment, catalysts, technical services, everything that goes along with it. But again, where we value where we say we bring value to the customer is really being involved at the very early stage. Again, conceptualization all the way through the life cycle of the project. Okay, I think it's right on time. 0 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff Caden, for the knowledge from long-term study of your company Axens นี่นะครับออกเสียงถูกแล้วนะฮะ Axens นะครับบริษัทนี้นะครับสุดยอดเลยอธิบาย
I can pronounce it now. It says Axens, right? So we're very glad to hear from them. We've heard a lot of interesting technologies, and we add to that from what we've heard from Honeywell, and both of them are from the U.S. So it's kind of like Bangchak got these two together and to have them fight it out, right? And we've seen a lot of other people here who may be potential partners for either or both of these companies. So we've seen their experiences, we've seen their work in this landscape, and they've seen where the world is heading, the new trends. And in 2030, we know, right, that our goal is to be carbon neutral. And after that, the target, the long-term target is is in 2050, which some of the people who made that agreement might not be there by then, but it's a long-term target that we will have to keep nonetheless. And so become zero emissions, that is going to be the ultimate goal. And today, maybe we can try to start by breathing less, maybe to emit fewer, less CO2. But that's an example to show that some things aren't feasible. If things are too restrictive, it doesn't help. So we have to find ways to ensure that everyone can work together and benefit together. And that is why we have this next panel. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to hear from a wide various perspectives on this issue when talking about sustainable aerospace and sustainable technologies. We are going to see how these things can be put into practice, how they are used in the real world in our panel discussion on pioneering sustainable aerospace. And the Thai name is very elegant, so thank you very much, Kun Koi, for writing up a very nice script for me. And as we know, the main focus on today is on sustainable aviation fuel, right? How much do you think aviation contributes to global emissions? But let's just think of a number, and it's in the single digits, because there are a lot of emissions worldwide. If we look only at aviation, it's only at 2%. It sounds small, but it is actually quite a lot, as there are many different ways that we can emit carbon, and many activities that we do that contribute to those emissions. But we have expectations that we can reduce emissions in the aviation sector by 88%. So maybe we need SAF, but trying to get everyone on board might not be as easy as we thought, because everyone, they're happy with the old ways. They like to do things as they have been doing. But before we reach that point of no return, we need to find a way to rein it in and to find alternatives. If we look at traditional fuels, from drilling, from extracting and getting it to the airplanes, we know how that works and we know the consequences. But what about alternative pathways? If we're looking at what people have mentioned, using used cooking oil and turning that into fuel, how does that work? How can we get people on board? Because in the past, we used a lot of animal fat in cooking, but we were able to transition to using more vegetable oils as well. Maybe we can do the same here to shift the types of oils and fuels that we use in aviation.
So for this transition, there needs to be regulation, because if it's mandatory or compulsory, it will take too long. So how can SAF change sustainable aviation? So new CEO of BASF, or Bangkok Aviation Fuel Services. A round of applause for Mom Luong Nattasit Bisakun, CEO of BAPS.
และยังมีนะครับวันนี้นะครับผู้มากประสบการณ์จากงานวิจัยและพัฒนาเทคโนโลยีจาก Airbus.
And we also have head of technology from Airbus. So commercial aviation producers. So head of technology from Airbus. Welcome Dr. Gan In Liu.
ดรการเอิญเลียวนะครับนี่การเอิญเลียวนะครับสวัสดีนะครับ nice to meet you โอเคนะครับท่านที่3นะครับ
So the third on the panel, we have executives from Area IATA, who is overseeing Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. So we have IATA Area Manager, Mr. Yongyut Lukjintanon, please. And we also have another CEO who is his interest in aviation, and he has built a brand that is sustainable with respect to the socio-economic and environmental aspect. Brandy and Company CEO Kun Piyachat, please. Fifth on our panel, very famous influencer who produces green content. Her lifestyle is super environmentally friendly. Welcome Kun Maxine Intiphon Bamsukhi. And last but not least, from his great perspective, his show, Mr. Suwikrom Amaranan or Kun Per, who will be moderating this panel, please. So a very, very good morning to everyone. So a correction, Kun Per is not moderating, but he is joining as a panelist. So we'll just continue to talk, and we'll leave some minutes for Q&A towards the latter part.
ถ้าท่านอาจจะเขินในการยกมือและพูดเองนะครับเขียนได้และเดี๋ยวเรา
And also you can submit your questions by writing them down. So all the panels are here. I'd like to throw in the first question for everyone. So I'd like to hear your opinion on how we can transition to sustainable aviation. So what are your opinions on that, on how we can move towards sustainable aviation, and when do you reckon that will happen? Can we go first to Mom Luang Natasit, please? Thank you very much. Well, an aviation industry is an important sector for the world because it promotes economic development and connects people together. And during the COVID pandemic, you can see the fall of aviation. However, post-COVID, you can see the sales of Airbus has actually exceeded the record pre-COVID. So I think India Airline has actually ordered 500 planes, which will be delivered in 2030. And just 2 weeks ago, last week, well, there is by air show, and there's the sales of planes have actually rocketed again. So it is actually still exponentially growing. But the challenge is aviation. How can we decarbonize the industry? And this morning we heard Kun Chaiwat that it will be difficult if we go towards battery solution. So the best option right now is probably a liquid form, and the only option that we can see now is SAF, so sustainable aviation fuel. So BAF, we provide fuel service, so we refuel planes and jets. So what we do is we want to try and test on how we can deliver the best fuel service. And we have tried in 2011, which was called Biojet way back then, and we have done our research. So now bio is not enough, but we need to be sustainable as well. Because if we only have the bio aspect, but you've gained that through cutting down trees, so that's not beneficial to the environment. So aviation industry is an important sector for the human race. People will need to travel. The only way to go is we need to work towards SAF as fast as we can.
From the topics, pioneer of aerospace, could you please tell us how can we make it happen by your perspective?
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and on behalf of Airbus, thank you very much for inviting us here today and to contribute to this lovely event, and from our opinion as well as what can be done for the industry of SAF. So, apologize if I were to speak Thai, none of you will understand.
Don't worry. We have translated. Doraemon, yes. Okay.
So I will go as carefully and as slowly as I can. So coming back to your question with regards to what can be done to really accelerate as well as what can be done in the SAF industry.
Yeah, that's right.
So in the previous speakers, I think you all have now seen the complexity of SAF. You've seen that this is part and parcel among other actions as well to decarbonize the entire aviation industry, to reach our aspirational goal of 2050 to be net zero. SAF being the major contributor, but is not the only contributor within this space. But coming back to the topic of SAF, so we see that although Asia Pacific or Asia as a whole houses the most amount of population, in terms of projects and SAF, it is not the same kind of ratio or momentum that we see compared to US and Europe.
That's
but
right.
in the region holds also a huge potential, especially on the biomass side. And I just wanted to share that we need to be a bit careful in terms of biomass or what the source comes from. At the end of the day, this is something that we need to be careful because of the carbon savings. So I'm glad that we have at least 2 technology providers here today that shared their technology to convert whatever it is in terms of feedstock over to SAF. And I'm glad to also hear that on their side, they're also doing as much as they can to reduce their carbon footprint in the processing of the feedstock over to SAF. So these are the kind of things that we need to be aware in terms of what the carbon intensity is going from feedstock all the way to loading the SAF up onto the plane. So each one of this process needs to be very well observed in terms of what is the CO2 of this process, and therefore you stack it up together to give you the kind of fuel savings that will be translated to the airline, and at the end of the day translated to the passengers, because you want to know that you are contributing to the betterment of the earth and for the betterment of the next generation in terms of their livelihood, in terms of sustainability and the greening of the earth. So encouragement in terms of what SAF can do. Let's work together. Let's find the best solution. And I'm glad that Bangchak has organized this event, because this is really a place where we could sit down, discuss, and see how we can collectively work together to achieve the SAF dream.
That's the reason why we come here and sit down and talk for conversation. Thank you for your initial answer. We will talk more for the next round.
My pleasure.
มาที่คุณยงยุทธนะครับ
So let's now proceed to Yong Yut from IATA or IATA, IATA. So how can we make this transition and where do we start? Thank you very much, Kun Nui. A very good morning, distinguished guests. So IATA represents the airlines, right? We have 318 airlines under IATA, and we work with airlines in order to promote sustainable airline businesses. So if I can give you a background of some statistics of the traveling that is occurring in 3 or 4 years or in 20 years in the future, pre-COVID 2019, you can see the numbers of people traveling. Currently now, to 2030 in Thailand, we are about 80% of 2019. So you can see that growth. So it has been recovering, but not at the level of 2019. So the forecast is about 2025. We're going to reach the level of pre-COVID. So there's another important number or figure here. Our forecast in 20 years in comparison to the current state is the growth of the people, of travelers around the world. In Europe, there will be a growth of 700 million. So that's 3% growth. In the US is about 500 million in 20 years. So that's a 3% growth as well. But in the future 20 years, the important region is Asia Pacific. They will have 2.8 billion travelers. So Thailand, being in Asia Pacific, will see the Thai population start traveling. So we're talking about the travelers, the number of travelers.
ส่วนเที่ยวก็แปลว่าถ้าคนเดินทางมากขึ้น
So if you have more travelers, airlines will continue to increase their flights, right? And whether do we have planes, and the slot or traffic rights will get impact as well. And there are several elements that will be impacted. First is the digitalization that's going to enable aviation business. So aircraft technology and digitization using biometric will be important as well. The second element is safety. So the more the people that travel, more aircrafts are being used, safety is at the heart. The third important element, most of it all actually, so 2% carbon emission from the aviation industry. So in terms of its quantity, it may seem a lot, but there will be carbon emission issue that aviation or airlines will have to take care of. So I think it's great that we are coming together today to recognize sustainable aviation fuel, because SAF will actually really help curb carbon emission. Another figure is that the volume of SAF comparing to other solutions, whether it's using carbon capture technology, SAF is at the priority, and utilizing SAF is a commitment that the best commitment that we have now, and the best practical method over hydrogen or a battery option. So SAF is at the top priority, and I think it will enable us to respond to the future where we'll have more travelers. So there are so many alternative energy, but SAF can actually be the main fuel. So in order to curb carbon emission. So we are now seeing the airlines recovering up to 80% pre-COVID. So let's talk about manufacturer. Let's talk to Kun Piyachat. So Brandy and Company, you design sustainable brands. Kun Piyachat, what do you see on how we can materialize this? What's the call to action? So thank you very much, Bangchak and Kun Nui. So working in aviation is bringing a comeback.
มันมี Aero กับ Astro นะต้องแยกให้ออกนะ
So Aero is below 600 kilometers. So Astro is above that. So I have been working on this issue because I also work with AI on space. So 10 years ago, nobody knew about AI or artificial intelligence. Then in the 10 years in the future, everyone will be interested in space. Who are you? So I did a research which is on space colonization, which is really interesting. So let's be realistic and coming back to the topic. So Brandy and Company, we deliver strategies for companies who are only seeing profit and transforming the profit, people, and planet as their bottom line. So the success of a future-ready organization, you need to report that how you have improved the nature capital from operating your business, and that's what I've all been working on. So it's a new concept 10 years ago. When it was really new, we didn't have that SDG. We had the MDGs. You may not recognize that anymore. And there has been a shift.
ประมาณนั้นคือพอมันเป็นเรื่องใหม่เนี่ยสิ่งที่เราทำเยอะ
And we always have to think about working with international corporations and work with governments. We have to have that cooperation because we have to change the ecosystem. It's not just changing one product and working for a group of consumers. We have to look at the entire ecosystem and see if it is available to adapt or adopt the new product. Because, for example, I travel about 40-50 times by air. So if we look and come back to basics and we talk about the air travel becoming more intense, going back to previous levels, because we've been holed up for the past couple of years and everyone wants to travel now. So when we look at decarbonization, we have to prioritize efficiency and effectiveness. And I think a lot of people here are interested and might actually go to COP28. And actually, I feel that we might have to change because just by traveling there, we are creating a problem. Maybe we'll have to sail there, and I'll travel like a couple months beforehand. I'll see you there. But anyways, in all travel, we have to start to think about how efficient we are in our travels. And that's going to be the starting point. And if we have to travel, I feel that SAF is similar to alternate energy. Because we know it's good. Alternative source, we know it's good, but maybe not now. And we have to look at adoption. How can we get a high rate of adoption and people feel like they want it now? To get them to demand this new fuel source. Get the consumers to want to fly on planes that use SAF. So where does that start? Do we have to start at the airlines? Are we going to get the consumers to like say that, get the SAF on your planes or else we won't fly with you? And that goes back to like the people profit planet. Because there's a trade-off in the long term. We can't just focus on like short-term gains, the prices. We have to look at what we care in the long term. So that's just my initial thoughts. And we'll go into more detail later, hopefully. Let's go on to Kun Maxine. It's her channel online. So we said that we want to make sure that sustainable air travel is feasible. So how do you think we can do that? So hello, and thank you for actually saying hello to me. And as someone who travels a lot as well and creates content on my travels, I try to create like green content, save the planet content. So as many people have mentioned, adoption is a real problem. So for me, what I think we can do is to create awareness to make sure people know about these things. And once we know about them, we're aware of them, we will place value on these things. For example, when we travel, we will emit about 4.8 tons of carbon emissions. That's on economy class. If we go to business, that's even higher. That's about 9. So for economy class, 4.8 or 5 tons. I'm about 50 kilograms. So that's about 100 of me flying. So that's very heavy, that's like an entire elephant's worth. So when we're flying to America, we're leaving an elephant of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But if we go to business class, that's even more. It makes it at least twice, right? Because you require more space. Therefore, if we want consumers to adopt sustainable air travel, we have to start with raising awareness. And once they know about the issue, we can reinforce that by using green labeling, for example. In the past, remember in Thailand, we have the 5-star stickers about energy efficiency. So we have to think about how consumers can relate to it and how they can have it constantly in their minds. Have some labels there to show them that these are the things that are environmentally responsible. So next, Kun Per, you're the last person on stage now on the panel. And I've heard you interview a lot of other people, but now I'm going to interview you. Do you think we can talk about perspectives? Can we change people's perspectives on SAF? I think we might have to wait and see, because as travelers, I think few people are even aware that there are options. For example, the fuels that we are using currently, we don't even know what they're using now. What's the carbon content, how much they use. But if there is some legislation or regulation and we make it like a national agenda, a global agenda, that this is for environmental conservation, that it saves the world, people will start to know what SAF is. For example, if you look at the EU, they mention that once it becomes a mandate, people are very eager to push SAF into the forefront, otherwise they might get fined. At the moment, I think if we were to adopt SAF right now, it might be still costly as a new technology. But if we can get things like cash tax subsidies or exemptions, or if we're able to do something with the ticket pricing that relates to SAF, maybe we can help promote it. Or we could also promote it as you're flying with your own used cooking oil. That might be a way to promote it. In my perspective, if like normal people, they don't really care. But if someone, an international organization or like IATA or airlines, well, international airlines comes and say that this is good fuel, this is something that's good, I think the customers will be more aware and like more willing to support the SAF airlines. And I think I have other opinions, but let's start with this just for now. I feel that if the airlines start adopting it, I think customers will have no problem getting on board with it. I think one of the things that came out is there needs to be regulation, because consumers aren't the one who's making those decisions, choosing the fuel. So let's go back to IATA. What do you think you can do? Can you discuss it with the airlines? How do you get the regulators to maybe set some guidelines? And could you please tell me how you can work on that, or what have you already done? So I think this is just we're at the very early stages of adopting SAF, so there are a lot of things we still have to learn from places that have already started, and we have to look at how we can do some creative knowledge to get people to know about the benefits of SAF more. And I think we can break it down into 3 parts. First of all is we have to work with the government. That's very important. As we all know that, and I'm not just talking about the Thai government, but the governments of all the countries around the world. We have to look at what incentives, what mandates they have in other countries, what policies they have. Maybe they can have policies that promote SAF. This is something that we're working with our government to have that clarity in messaging and any mandates as necessary, and then we can work at the regional and global level so that all airlines know what is expected of them when they operate in these countries and on their routes. And we also have to have set targets on how much we're going to scale up the SAF SAF adoption, because we can't just say that we're going to use it but with no targets, so we can keep track of how much progress we're making. And we have to talk together with the manufacturers of SAF, so we have to discuss how much is needed to support all the airlines operating each year. And that goes back to like working throughout the entire ecosystem. We need to know where we can get the feedstock for SAF. And I think we're right close. Since we're at Bangchak, maybe we can just go and ask them like how much they can produce. Before we have any rules or regulations, we need to know the numbers, the capacity. And another thing is like the infrastructure. For example, BAF, they work for refueling. We need to look at does their infrastructure support SAF? Can their equipment handle this type of fuel? And that's something that we have to work with a lot of different sectors and agencies. And the third part will probably be the users, especially users also mean the airlines because they use SAF, but users also mean the passengers who take those airlines. So if we look at users in terms of airlines, we have to talk to them to build confidence that SAF is safe, is practical, and then so that they can relay that message to their passengers to know that this is actually a better option. And airlines can do that by adjusting costs to entice passengers to, because if SAF makes air travel more affordable, more people will want to fly on airlines that use SAF. And at the moment, I think because we're still using fossil fuels, the prices are higher than the costs just to cover all the operations. But I think at the moment, for example, if we're using 1 million liters per day, if we can produce more, then the more supply there is, I think there is the demand that should be there. And another thing that other people mentioned was certification. We need to know that like the aircrafts can operate using SAF without failing, and that SAF is safe to be used on airplanes. So that these are the things that need to be discussed, so that airlines, like I mentioned again, clear messaging to raise awareness. And I agree with the consumer side, because if you don't travel, especially if you don't travel by plane, you'll never have heard of SAF before. So I think it needs to start at the policy level, and then it will be able to expand onto all the other things I mentioned, the practical side of things, the messaging. Maybe you can paint it on the side of the plane, right? And well, we have a content creator here. We can use social media. Maybe use something that's catchy for Thai people. Don't emit an entire elephant's worth of carbon every time you fly, or something like that. I think it's very important to continue IATA's work with all our partners, and it might we have to go one step at a time, but potentially, hopefully one day when we have enough SAF for all the airlines, we won't have to increase the prices of flights, because right now we feel every time we travel somewhere, the tickets are so expensive. And there's something I also want to add, because there's a lot of it that relies on marketing. Because if we can do something like have a point system, or you can collect extra miles by using an airline that uses SAF, that might be one way. And because Bangchak is also a shareholder in one of the largest producers of SAF, so if we could have something to say like, okay, this if you fly on an airline that uses SAF, you also get Bangchak points. You can use it to exchange for things, or to reduce the price of petrol at Esso. Actually, they've changed to Bangchak, Siracha, right? So it's a new logo, new branding now. But that's the thing, you try to integrate it into the Bangchak ecosystem. But I don't know in detail how that can be done. We have to talk to the marketing team. Do we have the budget? How feasible it is? But I'm talking from the perspective of a consumer. If the marketing is good, if the rewards are enticing, then of course we would want to pay for those things. We might, even if we have to pay more, if the rewards are worth it, we might even be incentivized to do so. And so that's a good idea of try to integrating it into a loyalty program. What about Kun Piyashat? I had to look up some of the detail because you developed like a 5-pronged sustainability process. Like you have to look at information, investment, and other things. So is there anything else you would like to add? So just to build on what the other two mentioned, it's always like a chicken and egg problem, right? So what's going to be the catalyst? Is it going to be policy, laws, or is it going to be the demand? And I feel that, well, let's talk about one example. I emitted an elephant the other day by flying to a meeting, and I went there. I didn't talk about Greta but we were going there to talk about how businesses can be a part of, driving the SDGs. And I felt that there are 3 deadlocks that we have to resolve. First is the bargaining power. We have to understand that in reality, when we look at the EV market, for example, it sounds like EV is such a good thing, right? But people are always asking the question, why has it not replaced internal combustion engines yet? Even though we see an increase in EVs, but it hasn't fully replaced them yet. So people are wondering why. Because if you look back 100 years, there are some laws or policies made by the government when it comes to vehicles. And the private sector had to abide by those laws. But nowadays, a lot of the new directions are determined by the private sector. Even if the government sets a law, but if the private sector isn't on board, then it's not going to work out. So we have to look at where the deadlock is. And one of the conditions is to involve the private sector in the decision making. And there are a lot of things that we ask, like why do we have to delay SAF? A lot of people are still worried about the safety, and there are issues that people will be okay with, like if it's safety. Even though people want to go to protest against not using SAF, we still have to wait until it's credited and we know that it's safe. There are still some things that we have, like some key things that we have to make sure pass before we can move forward. And it has to be like a win-win situation. The regulators have to win, the companies have to win, and the consumers also have to win. And we also have to talk about the time frame. How long will it take for this transition? Because if we look at SAF, it's like EVs. It sounds really good, but the people on the business side, they have to look at the process. There's always added value and added cost. So we have to balance that. When we're doing like recycled shirts, we're using waste plastic to make new shirts. It sounds like a really good thing, but if the costs don't make sense, if we can't upscale it, then it's not going to take off. And that will determine what we can demand. And that means we have to look at the incentives on who is going to benefit from these things. If consumers aren't getting anything, they won't care, no matter how good it is, because the world is very customer-centric nowadays. So we have to have not just collaboration with the private sector, but with the customers as well. Or sometimes you might just have to push the idea that you have to, inconvenience yourself in some ways for the planet. What about Mamnong Natasit? BAF is about adopting SAF. You're already rhyming. So do you think it will be beneficial for you? Do you think you can transition to SAF without making too many changes? If you just like secretly fill the airplanes now with SAF, will people know? Well, the question that many people brought up about adoption, I don't think it's a demand. It's not a demand side problem. It's a supply side problem, because earlier we've heard that there's not enough feedstock, there's not enough production. So we like to thank Bangchak today to get us together here to re-emphasize that the demand is there. And why is that? Why is there demand? Because the airline industry is a global industry. And if we look at the regulators, for example, we look at the EU, they are the ones that have put it into law. It's enforced, and it's going to start going to full effect next year. That by 2025, after 2025, it has to be at least 2% SAF of the total volume. But the law is more imposing on the oil industry, the fuel industry. They will have to find that 2% SAF somehow. And as I mentioned earlier, that it's the air travel industry is global in nature. We said that if the prices are like 3.5 times more expensive, then we'll have to regulate the pricing as well to make it more attractive to customers, to make it more practical for operators. And if and that means that no matter where the plane originates from, if it lands in Europe, it will have to have 2% SAF. And of course, Thai Airways is going to have to follow that. Anyone who flies into Europe has to follow those regulations. I remember flying to Zurich. It's like quite expensive, I remember. And I mean, the gap between economy and business is so big, but business to first class isn't that big, right? So how do you think we can compete using those like types of prices? What I'm trying to say is that SAF is inevitable. So after the EU, the US is probably going to follow suit. So whether we like it or not, if Japan adopts that regulation, whether we like it or not, we are going to have to follow. If not, then the fuel costs will high. Sometimes we have something called tankering, right? So we fly somewhere else to refuel because the cost of fuel, for example, in Thailand might be more expensive. So we have to have a global regulation. Since it's global in nature, it needs to be globally adopted. And that's when the true transition, the true competition will come. Like I mentioned, the demand is there. What we can be proud on is that maybe nowadays, in the boarding pass, you can say that how much carbon credits you get. And that's also in the law, because any airlines who wants to claim carbon credits, you need to be certified by the authorities. So for the challenges, I think of there are for SAF is certification and traceability, because not all SAF are created equal. SAF from biomass will get a certain level of carbon credits. The other types, other sources will get different credits as well. So we also need to be able to trace back to, as was mentioned earlier, like where does the biofuels, where does the feedstock come from, what type is being used. This is also very important. And as people who just refuel it, we have to make sure that every single drop of fuel is quality fuel, so that we are safe and we are confident that we provided the best product. Now for Thailand, since we are going to have SAF production sites, because Bangchak's already started investing in it, now we're going to look at the materials, the SPC, whether it's from algae, from biomass, from sugars, from ethanol. There's going to be a lot of variety, and then we're going to blend them, because SAF is, it's like a alcoholic blend, similar to that. It's not single source, so we have to blend it from different things, and we have to check, we have to validate if it meets the specifications, if the quality is high enough. So next we have to think about where is the blending location going to be, and the transport to the blending and to the fueling. Is it sustainable? Because if a single thing along the supply chain is not sustainable, then that's going to be a problem. And claiming carbon credits is also going to be very important, and the blending, the source of the feedstock, the blending site, and everything else is going to be something that needs to be traceable and something that is very important for the consumers. So maybe Bangchak can start to think about that.
And we move to talk about the technology of aircraft on behalf of the Airbus company. Since Airbus is playing a role as a catalyst in the development of SAF, could you please share, Dr. Liu, about the success story, case study in partnership or initiative related with SAF from your side?
So thank you very much for the question. So from the translation, I hear a lot of keywords: traceability, global, government, and these kind of things.
They translate my word. It's okay?
I don't know because I don't understand Thai.
Good.
I
Keep
understand
secret.
whatever the translator tells me. So I'm glad that these words are mentioned. And yes, SAF, or let's say decarbonization, it's a global thing. It's a global effort. And everybody has to do their part. Traceability is important. Cooperation between industry, government, academia, regulators, auditors, things like that. So it is a global sense. And for Airbus, we have initiatives throughout the world, for sure. I just want to focus on Asia Pacific because this is where we are. We have heard from Mayata that although a lot of other parts of the world it has recovered to pre-COVID levels, Asia Pacific is still lagging behind. There is chance for us to grow there. We are the fastest growing region in the future in terms of the number of planes that will be flying, and thereby, of course, the amount of fuel that is consumed.
Yeah, right.
So focusing on this region, we are engaging in a lot of countries, with a lot of industry, with a lot of academia, universities, as well as having discussions and opening dialogues with the government, because this is something that needs to be discussed. From a regulation point of view, of course, you can encourage the adoption of SAF through mandates, for example, and you could also entice the entire ecosystem to work by providing incentive, by providing things like schemes for research and development. So today, again, going back to the fuel producers, you can see the amount of technology that is required inside, the amount of engineering capability that is inside. And talent is something that I haven't heard yet today, but it's also a same thing whereby by creating awareness, you are also creating the future talents to enable the sustainability today. Because as young as we are here today, hopefully we will get to retire, and we need the next generation to carry on the flag of sustainability. And
you talk like an old man.
I am old. I'm about 5 years away from retiring.
Oh, you look young.
Maybe.
Younger than that.
No. So there is still a lot of fuel left in my tank. Hopefully, there will be the fuel left will encourage sustainability to be more. But what we are talking today about sustainability, it is great. The awareness is there, and I hope that one day sustainability will be instilled in every single one of the next generation.
Sure.
It's not about the cost to bring sustainability in, but it becomes a norm. Just as now we don't want to use single-use plastics, for example.
That's right.
This is also the change that needs to happen in terms of customer awareness.
That's right.
So the passengers that fly. So
right.
in terms of initiative, aside from encouraging the production of SAF locally. So as you so rightly mentioned the word, Airbus catalyzes, we advocate the goals for sustainability. And again, I will stress, it is not only about SAF. So SAF, yes, it is the majority. We're talking about 56% reduction. And when you compare SAF to conventional kerosene jet A1, which, by the way, we know exactly what is in kerosene jet A1. It has a very, very long history of how the formulation is done. But this is exactly the part that makes SAF difficult. Kerosene jet A1 itself, formula, chemistry, is very complex. Okay, you're talking about over 1,000 compounds inside kerosene jet A1 itself. And when it comes to SAF, it gives us the ability to tailor-make, customize the SAF to have a bit more energy content, which means that per liter of fuel or per kilogram of fuel, you can go a bit further. Okay, you can depart. So like a car, when you drive from a standstill to the speed that you want, whether you follow the speed limit or not.
Up on octane.
Some people accelerate a bit faster, so they have bad fuel efficiency. Some people accelerate like your grandmother, so it's a bit more efficient. So these kind of things all come into play at the aircraft level. And thereby, do you produce an elephant, if the translation is correct, the elephant worth of CO2, or do you produce a little bit less than an elephant? Okay? So that is on the SAF side. But then
Okay.
there's also other things like airport infrastructure and operations. Okay, are you going onto a plane and it's sitting there for half an hour, or are you going onto the plane and within 5 to 10 minutes you're already in the sky? So that itself also has benefits in terms of your CO2 emission as a passenger as well as an airline. And the other steps would be flying with the latest generation aircraft, for example. Okay, so around the world you only have about 25% of the global fleet
Yes.
flying the latest generation aircraft.
That's right.
And that compared to the non-advanced ones or the conventional aircraft, you at least get a 25% savings by using latest generation aircraft. So again, an elephant, if you fly in the newer planes like the A350, for example, or the A330 Neos or the XLR, you are automatically already flying 25% less of an elephant. Okay? So maybe a young elephant that you actually get to
that's right,
produce.
that's right.
Okay?
Or turn young elephant to the cat, release cat to the
One
air.
day. So if you stack all these potentials together, an airline using SAF, an airline using the latest generation aircraft, an airport and air traffic management utilizing the best practices, maybe you'll get a cat. Or maybe a dog. You know,
okay.
let's see.
Dog
So-
is okay.
Dog is also okay. So it really depends on the destination, on the site, and of course, as what was mentioned, it depends really on the feedstock that you're using. You can have up to 85% CO2 savings if you use the correct kind of feedstock. And if you don't use feedstock that are good, okay, you will not get the 85%. Maybe you get the 30%. Maybe you get the 20%. So it really depends. And all of this is part and parcel of the complexity of enabling SAF production and really enabling the decarbonization of the entire sector, that is aviation, for the consumers to understand. So the awareness is very good to have, and for sure we need the awareness. And I think that's something that it is lacking. We are working a lot on the technical aspects and trying to advocate for this. Social media and content creators, this is something that can be up and coming and new to tackle on that.
That's right. So important.
It is important. So it is that awareness that needs to be created, and it is something that we have talked to a lot of airlines, and I hope that IATA can back me up on this. There are options now when you fly to check that box that I want my carbon to be offset. Okay? Just the same as everybody here uses Grab. How many of you enables that carbon offsetting, which I think in Malaysia is like 1 ringgit. I don't know how much it is. 1 baht? 1 baht?
1 baht.
Even
baht.
better. So it's 1 baht. How many of you actually check that? And this is the kind of... It's automatically on, but how many of you remove that?
That's right, that's right.
So that itself is very small but important. But at airline level, the amount, so now you have that awareness whereby on your boarding pass, you have the CO2 awareness there, but how many of you actually check the offset? So in a global perspective, there are some airlines that have been doing extremely well in that, whereby their passengers actually check that. So a lot of the CO2 that is being flown by the passengers is offset. But when you look at other airlines, that is not the case. So it is again the awareness that needs to be increased, and this really combine everything together, you will get our 2050 goal, okay, of decarbonizing the whole entire sector. And this is where we start today to bring people together, to bring the key stakeholders together to work on projects not only on SAF, which is very important because it accounts for 52%, but also on other things like adopting better aircraft, by adopting better practices in terms of infrastructure operations, and also as well as looking into carbon offsetting as well. So all of these things combined will get us to that net carbon zero by 2050.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, and thank you for the idea. So good. Can I add a short question that you can say yes or no? All the aircraft around the globe nowadays for the model, every model can accept SAF, right?
Yes, so on Airbus side, all of our products have been tested not only at 50%, which is what the legal limit is today, but we've actually tested it at 100%. So all of Airbus products are able to take on 100% SAF, no blending required, directly into the tank, directly used in flight. So that is possible to do. We're just now waiting for all the certifications to be done. But in terms from the testing perspective, technology, no issue to fly 100% SAF. But remember, although it is able to fly SAF, even at 50% and soon at 100% for regulation, the amount of SAF being produced today is less than 1%. So it is globally, we have to increase that SAF output from less than 1%, first target, 1%. It doesn't sound a lot, but it is a huge gap that we have there. So let's get to 1% and then we can go more and then the global fleet will adopt it as the demand not say demands come, the supply comes, sorry. Because I agree with him, it is not a demand problem. Okay? The demand for SAF is in billions. Okay? It changes every day and it changes upwards, means that the demand is increasing. But the production at the moment is only in millions. So we are still far away for that. So it's not a demand side, it's really the supply side. And if you break up the supply, it's the feedstock. Technology we know is not an issue, but feedstock as well as enabling the entire system, which is governmental side as well.
I will ask the demand from the influencer นี่คุณแม็กซีนนะครับกล้าใช้ไหมเครื่องบินที่บอกว่าบินด้วยน้ำมันพืชอ่ะมาจากครัวแล้วก็
Would you fly a plane that is made from used oil that is made to SAF? So as a media influencer, so just as mentioned by Kun Per, if the airline uses SAF, I'll be able to fly that automatically. But how do we trust the capabilities? So even certified by ATA or BAFS, you mentioned about credibility, quality, sustainability. I think that will actually gain our trust because as a traveler, we care mostly about safety and the price. Like currently these days, the supply of SAF does not meet the demand because what's being produced. So us consumers, even if we care about the environment, like we do recognize that customers like compare like flights, right? And then they also take off the carbon offset. But I'm just curious.
Carbon offset. I mean, when we take like the carbon offset, does it actually really offset the carbon that we're on the plane? I really want to know.
Is a real carbon offset or just the gimmick of the marketing to get more profit? นี่
อยากรู้ว่าเวลามันมีให้
So I'm really curious. But he can answer that directly to you later. Maybe I'll address Kun Per now. So as a communicator, so how should airlines communicate to customers, consumers? What kind of information is important to communicate this? Because we want people to understand carbon neutrality and carbon offset. So I think it goes back to market mechanism and to have that fund campaign. But it's not just solely airlines, because it has to come from SAF producers as well. You have to work closely with airlines and have that campaign together. Particularly, if any airline would be that pioneer to use SAF, just giving you a simple example, like in the past where there's an airline that is trying to use that automatic machine. So automatic check-in, but with them, using this automatic machine, they're able to save cost, and then other airlines follow suit. So if airlines can actually work together with SAF producer and have that campaign and then communicating that to consumers, to airlines, and giving carbon credits or point system, let them earn something and have that, redeem scheme. So I think you can actually have that advantage if you go on this first. Like if you can actually give Bangchak points, right? Because you have your own point system. But the problem lies is when you have that campaign, you will have consider a bad tai, and perspective shows because our shows are very important on the online platform and also my platform as well, Maxine channel. And I think a lot of people want to communicate this. So I think we are moving towards the time that we need to conclude. Do we have any burning questions from the audience? Please. So it's not a question, but I'd like to confirm on what we've been discussing, that we have on how we can really offset if we use SAF. So we have a system called book and claim. So once you book your air tickets, you can claim your emission, which is used by SAF. So we are working on this, and I do confirm that when we can produce SAF, you can actually claim that carbon credit from utilization of SAF and the fossil fuel that were saved. And we are working this on the Carbon Market Club platform. And communication and promotions, we recognize that we have to recognize Bad Thai, Perspective Show, and Maxine channel. So thank you very much for joining the panel today. So because that concludes everything, because what we're all discussing, this is what Bangchak has been doing, because we want to try to communicate this to our consumers. And, you know, we are visualizing this. I can actually see the whole story by Ajahn Pun, but you will get this images that he's been recording. So this is actually, so thank you very much. I didn't go through all my questions because of limited time, but I'm glad to have all of you here. Maybe if you want the world to move towards a better aviation, maybe starting with Maxine, just a brief ending. So just travel responsibly, be aware, and in the future, pick your airlines that use SAF. Kun Piyachat, maybe some concluding words. So I think our lives can be better with the capital. Like if you have capital, you'll be great, right? If you're a business. If you're a people, if you have skills, that's great. But in environment, it's great if we can curb carbon. So the book and claim scheme, we decouple this from the manufacturing process on how much carbon you carry. So, and we want to try to it's actually can actually be traded. There is value, the same as currency. I hope it's not like Bitcoin. So you can learn from Bad Thai perspectives and Maxine. Thank you very much. Kun Yong Yut. Last one from IATA. So I'll just be brief. So SAF is actually a small part of the whole sustainability. It's not just SAF that's going to save everything. So traveling in the future, that's going to grow exponentially. IATA has painted that picture for you, because our lives, you grow by traveling because you're actually seeing the world. So using airlines will actually be more important than ever. Aside from sustainability, SAF, airport operations, and how can we travel hassle-free and being able to ready to fly? How is your in-flight experience? How do you pick up your luggage? So you have already said that how we can be sustainable in enabling aviation technology to curb carbon emission. So manufacturer like Bangchak play an important part in our sustainable journey, which will actually bring true happiness when everyone travels. Thank you very much, everyone on our panel. Mom Luong Natasit Disakun, thank you. Dr. Kan Ung Liu, thank you very much. Kun Yong Yut Sutita, การนนท์ครูปิยชาติอิสระภักดีคุณอิทธิพรแต้งสุขินคุณแม็กซีและคุณเปอร์สุวิกรมอมรนันท์ Thank you very much everyone
ผ่อนนะครับในช่วงท้ายนี่ผมก็ไล่กวดกับเวลาอยู่นะครับเพื่อให้ท่านได้ทานข้าวตรงเวลานะครับทุกท่านครับวันนี้สังเกตดูไหมครับบางจากนะครับเราอยากจะทำให้ทุกอย่างมันดูครบที่สุด
So we want to try to be as neutral as possible with our events. So our new logo that has just launched, we are using this printed with paper. So thank you for letting me be a part and moderate this panel at this Greenovative forum under the theme of Regenerative Fuels, Sustainable Mobility. Thank you very much for joining us. ขอบคุณทุกคนมากๆเลยนะครับวันนี้ให้เกียรติเรานะครับทุกท่านครับเดี๋ยวเรามีอาหารเลี้ยงด้วยนะครับเดี๋ยวฟังรายละเอียดกันสักเล็กน้อยก่อนไปนะครับ So we have some lunch box for everyone to take home. I'll give you more details in a minute after this photo op. สื่อมวลชนมากๆเลยนะครับมาหลากหลายสื่อจริงๆ Thank all the press and media for being present at this Greenovative forum.
ที่ทดแทนสิ่งเดิมได้โดยง่ายนะครับแต่แน่นอนเราทิ้งธุรกิจเดิมไม่ได้นะครับอะไรเป็นความต้องการของผู้บริโภคเรายังคงทำอยู่แต่เราค่อยๆ transition อย่างมีบริบทที่สำคัญนะตอนนี้เราเห็นแล้วนะครับว่าเราทำได้แห่งแรกแห่งเดียวในไทยในหลากหลายเรื่องนะครับถือว่าเป็นเรื่องดีมากๆเลยเดียวแล้วก็บริษัทเราเติบโตอย่างก้าวกระโดดอย่างยิ่งนะครับขอบคุณทุกคนนะครับขอบคุณมากๆนะครับขอบคุณมากๆนะครับนี่คือโฉมของโลโก้ใหม่แล้วด้วยนะครับอยู่ในงานเรียกว่าตั้งชื่อครั้งแรกเหมือนกันนะฮะGreenovative Forum 2023 นะครับต่อไปนี้สัมมนาประจำปีอยู่ในชื่อแบรนด์นี้ครับ Greenovative นะครับ
So our annual event will be now called the Greenovative Forum. So thank you very much for joining us. So this is the 13th Greenovative Forum under the theme Regenerative Fuels, Sustainable Mobility. So we have a visual notes recorded by BBC by คุณปุ่นพนิชพันธ์มงคลสวัสดิ์ So you can come forward and take a photo with the visual recording. So from all the thoughts that were spoken in our forum are recorded visually on these boards. Thank you very much. So please visit the booth outside, Todd Meeting from BSGF, and join the Booth Market Club. Thank you very much. Interpreters signing off. So we do have QR codes everywhere. So please fill out the satisfaction survey so we can improve our future forums. And if you would like the presentation, please leave your emails at the registration desk. So thank you very much for joining us on behalf of Bangchak Group. Thank you for joining the Greenovative Forum. So please stay tuned for the next forum, the 14th forum. I'd like to now invite everyone to our lunch at Bangchak Room. Thank you very much.
Visual Thinking by BVC นะครับ